now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Good morning, Sandy. How are you?
Hello. Good morning. How are you guys doing?
We are good. It was
awesome.
Perfect timing today.
Perfect timing.
I know. Today.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon. We'll get it exactly
It'll
right.
never happen again.
Yay. Never say never, Aaron. It's a crazy world.
What do you got coming up on the show? What are the top news headlines today?
Top news headlines, the COVID breach, not COVID breach, but a quarantine situation. So we talked briefly about this yesterday, and essentially what happened is a man was found. Now, this is a pretty crazy story. A man was found by someone taking the garbage out. It seems like he literally collapsed or passed out or something. That's how sick he was. And someone found him and then, I guess called 911, got assistance for him, not knowing that he passed out because he has a serious case of COVID.
Oh, wow.
Is this the one? So this is the person in critical. What?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, he was outside and collapsed. So someone found him and not alone by himself.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So that's a pretty crazy story. So that was
several. Do we know the condition of this person in ICU?
They have said that he's stable.
Okay, that's good.
The most interesting thing about all of this, guys, is the fallout from it. Because obviously the guy who found him didn't have to go into quarantine.
Sure.
He went home not knowing that he had just assisted someone who has COVID.
Right.
And his entire, he lives in what's called a tenement yard, like, has housemates and they all share a common area. So everybody in that house had to be placed in quarantine. They're all being tested and contact tracing.
Yeah. I mean, certainly not his fault. He was doing the right thing, trying to be a good
help
citizen.
someone.
And
even HSA staff had to be placed in quarantine as an extra precaution because, again, I guess some of them were not aware of what he had and started treating him. And
So when the first responders aren't aware of where, like they can't check and make sure, is this a quarantine
how do they not know that?
thing?
How does the HSA not know that? Hey, we got a patient coming from a quarantine house.
It's a good question.
I've said this before because the only reason why I knew we had a neighbor, a direct neighbor of ours that was in quarantine that ended up having COVID and was in quarantine for 35 days. And our garbage cans are next to each other. So I, take the garbage out, could have had contact, unknowing. The only reason why I did know that my neighbor was next door was because we're friends and we kind of look out for each other. And I knew that she had been traveling and all that sort of thing. But they don't tell you, like nobody else told me. Like, so if the neighbor didn't know me or my family or whatever, you could have somebody quarantining next door, you would not know.
Yeah.
And I think they should. And I get it. It's like you don't want people to know because then there's extra scrutiny on this person. And I don't know, but in a way, you
I feel like there should be like maybe just like a little. I mean, it's just a sign that could say under quarantine. I don't know. It just needs to be because then someone could go to the door. You don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's just a lot of things that maybe could be done to avoid situations. But you'd think the people in quarantine would be like, "Hey, I'm in quarantine. Don't get close."
Yeah.
They're supposed to be the ones that are meant to like wear the masks. Because if you're going out to your garbage or whatever, I'm assuming you're supposed to wear a mask if you leave if you're going to like where it could be a public space.
Great question.
Who knows? I mean, we don't know any of that, but I mean, we've been saying this from day one, even in terms of people maybe breaching quarantine. Like you would want to know that house or delivering food to a house. Like you would want to know that is a quarantine house. So you could make sure that you're just extra, extra careful.
Yeah. If you're a frontline worker for sure. And the hospital staff obviously was, the medics obviously are.
Yeah.
It's something that they should know when they're going to a quarantine house, you would think. Anyway.
Well, good to hear he's in stable condition at least.
Yeah. So that was a pretty serious news story. That's, we're all kind of watching that situation, but public health has said that we don't have anything to worry about. I kind of feel like they always say that, but we will certainly be keeping an eye on things here because we had the inside track and exactly how additional persons were exposed. And, even people who worked with the persons in that house, they were like, nobody contacted me about contact tracing. Should we be, our employer, maybe he should have sanitized the work environment a little bit more. Like, who knows how far it could have gone.
Yeah.
Other news, the tourism stipend reopens as of today.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So that's a big, if you're in the tourism industry, obviously you want to pay attention to that. You can check out your available options at stipend.ourcayman.ky. This time around, I believe that they're actually doing a survey along with it where they're asking you to provide some information. So there's a stipend registration form, and then there's a stipend survey, which you have to apply, it says mandatory for all people that are receiving the stipend, and that has to be completed by July the 2nd. So they're just trying to get an idea of where people are at in terms of the employment situation. There've been some allegations that people are receiving the stipend and they're working full time or they have other jobs. So I think that, this will help the government make future decisions on what to do with the stipend, how soon they will be reducing it, and that sort of thing. So
how much do you get?
At the moment, it's $1,500. It's not supposed to be increasing. And I think what will happen the idea is once tourism begins to reopen and people start to get back to work, they're not going to just yank it from under you, but they're going to slowly reduce it maybe to half, and then give people perhaps a couple months.
Isn't a stipend something that's supplemental? Like they don't want to give somebody a stipend and I mean, I guess you're making they can't be working to get a stipend. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know.
Maybe they're not. Maybe they're working.
Because $1,500, if you're the main income holder, you have a home, you have kids, like that. That's a grocery bill.
Yeah,
in my house for with as many boys that I live with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, I think the idea, obviously, is people in need should be applying for the stipend. So if you have other sources of income, and I imagine there's some people who are in tourism, like maybe they drive a taxi part-time or whatever, but they really have a full-time job. And so that would be additional income for them. I mean, they could make the argument that, hey, they've gotten used to that additional income. But in all fairness, I keep trying to enforce to people that government doesn't have a bottomless pit of money. So if you can do without that stipend, and that would help somebody else perhaps even qualify or get the stipend, and not force the government to go in that much of a deficit, then, have a conscience, like try to live a restricted life a little bit more, given the current situation, and work with everything.
Aaron and I were just talking before we came on. They do have a bottomless.
I was just going to say the same
amount of money. They need give out more traffic tickets, more speeding tickets.
All they have to do
oh my gosh,
fines from the traffic department, and there endless. You go.
Bottomless.
For sure.
Yes. And then kind of a funny story, and then I'll tell you what story is trending the most this week. But a funny story is divers rescued a sex doll thinking that it was a woman who was actually drowning. I don't know if you guys saw this story.
Again, helpful citizens, Is that here?
But this happened in Japan.
Oh,
in Japan. Okay. Well, obviously Japan. That's like where they make them, right? Look, I hope you returned it to the owner.
Yes.
Oh my God. This is just so funny. But divers saw this woman in the water and think
yeah. Somebody wrote in big Sharpie on there. It's,
Tom's.
Oh my. So they thought that this was a real woman. I mean, it's a life-size woman, right? And to be honest, the picture looks kind of legit. Like that probably would have fooled me. I'm just going to put this up on the screen for viewers, but look at that. That would have fooled me.
Oh my God. That would have fooled me too as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, we need to recover this body.
I'm going to tell you what, someone bought that just to put that in water and see how long it would take for someone to rescue. They were actually part of a social experiment. Wow. I bet you anything.
So, so they took her out of the water, and then of course they discovered it was just a blow up doll.
I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me.
Right. Aaron, I didn't want to bring that up, but I immediately thought that when Sandy brought it up.
Oh my goodness.
What's trending really quick before we let you go?
Trending is the situation of the weekend with the woman who mashed up the car. So it's sort of international news. Other Caribbean papers have picked it up. And the story keeps expanding and getting more people involved, and more photos are up, and it's just a hot mess of a situation.
It's just like what is a Carrie Underwood song?
Before he cheats.
Before he cheats.
Yeah, that song.
Yeah, that situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
all right,
cool.
Catch Sandy Hill right now on Facebook. Her show starts right now. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, guys, have a good one. All right, folks. So those are, again, some of the headlines. KISS 106.1, we partner with them in the morning to kind of give them the tea, spilling the tea with Sandy and what is happening in the community. And some days are a little bit crazier than others, I have to admit. So we've got a full show for you guys this morning. I woke up to a few messages that are super, super interesting. And in fact, it's just... it's crazy. Someone sent me a PR question that showed up in the Women in Cayman group. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show if we have time. If not, we'll push it into tomorrow's discussion, because I think we've got Alric who's coming on the show tomorrow. So maybe we'll push that into tomorrow's discussion. But it is trending already this morning. Someone's basically saying that a spouse who hasn't lived here before is applying for PR. What would references from her country do? Because she doesn't know any Caymanians. She doesn't have any Caymanian friends. And apparently you're supposed to get references from Caymanians, but you're married to a Caymanian and you don't have any Caymanian friends. It's a little bit weird. It sounds like some sort of 90-day fiance situation. where you find the love of your life online. And we know how well those normally work out. So maybe we'll chat about those tomorrow. But today we're going to be talking about Caymanians and tourism. And we're going to be speaking with a few restaurant managers and owners to get their take on how, as a Caymanian, you can sort of leverage your position. And if you're interested in the tourism sector, if you're interested in the restaurant sector, what you need to do to position yourself to, get one of those jobs. So it's been a hot button topic. We're going to talk about why that is in a little bit here, but let's do our usual morning greetings. So of course, Marshall is here. Good morning, Marshall. Good morning to Evelyn. The lovely Maria is here. Good morning, Maria. So nice to see you. We have Evelyn again saying good morning to all. Dawn, good morning, Miss Sandy, and everyone on the islands. Thank you, Dawn. Blissful Powell is here, all locked and tuned in. We see over 200 of you already joining the program. Miss Rita, buenos dias, ¿cómo estás? Miss Rita is joining us. Elizabeth is here. Miss Joan is here. It says, don't all in quarantine wear a wristband. Miss Joan is speaking in relation to this man who was discovered. And then, others have had to go into quarantine as a result of this. And that was a very good question. And I'm a little bit confused, to be honest, Miss Joan, about how this happened, how this was even possible. Because yes, he should have been wearing a wristband. I understand that it was his last day of quarantine, but surely they had not released him because they would have had to have tested him first for him to have been released. And then he would have tested positive and he wouldn't have gotten released. So it seems to me that this incident that happened on Friday was a little bit earlier in the day. He was taking the garbage out and then he sort of collapsed or passed out. Now, when the guy found him, I don't know if he just didn't see the wristband. I mean, that's entirely possible. I don't know what kind of clothing he was wearing, but when you're helping someone, maybe you don't see the wristband until I don't know. I don't know how that happened. Was it already too late? But then he went home to his housemates. A lot of questions, Ms. Joanne, about how that's even possible. And the same question applies to the HSA employees. Because once again, they obviously got exposed at some level, and it seems like they were treating this individual and handling him in some fashion and were simply not aware that he was a high-risk patient. So I think anyone who comes in with a COVID wristband, for the avoidance of any doubt, should be treated as someone who is a potential COVID-19 patient, just to protect yourself. So you put on all the, PQ, what's it called? Protective, whatever equipment. I can't remember what it's called right now, but you put on your protective equipment and just make the assumption. So Blissful Powell says that she had the same question. Good morning, Olivia. Louis is joining us from Detroit. Says it's tea time and already did a day's work, it feels like. Louis, you must get up at the crack of dawn, child. Because believe me, some mornings I just want to sleep and I just need that extra half an hour. And I was up all night last night. And I should have, I knew once it hit like 12:30, I'm like, oh, I'm going to regret this tomorrow. But I was doing some work and I'm trying to get some streaming boxes ready for clients. And you know how it is when you're in a certain mode, sometimes you're just like, okay, one more, let me get this one thing done. And then next thing you know, it's like 1:00 in the morning. Sanya wants to know when the survey is coming out. So it is live now. I've just double checked the tourism website. It is live. Let me put up the link for all of you so that you can make sure that you have that. So yes, good folks, this is obviously, you want to ensure that you're applying for the tourism stipend. If you qualify, again, if you've been kind of skirting and taking advantage of a situation, I would recommend that you no longer do that. First of all, it's just not fair to other people in tourism. And like I said, the government doesn't have the kind of money I feel like people think that the government has. So you're not doing anyone a real, you're not doing anyone a real, you're not helping anyone by not following the intent of the stipend. And the intent of the stipend, folks, is that, you know, I'm just going to hyperlink this, by the way. The intent of the stipend is definitely that, there we go. Yeah, the intent of the stipend is that you apply if you need it. So if you're actually unemployed and you're being impacted by the shutdown. And I think that some people are being impacted, but it's like extra income. So it's not essential income. It's not, you know, it's a second or third job. Because let's be quite frank, folks, there are a lot of people in tourism who have other full-time jobs, and tourism is just like a side gig. You know, it's not their main bread and butter. So Jasara is here. Good morning, Miss Barbara. Felicia is also joining us. Sue says, yes, they do. My daughter and husband are in quarantine now and have them on. Well, no, that's not the question. The question isn't if you're supposed to be wearing a wristband. Of course, you're supposed to be wearing it. The question really is, how was it not seen really when the person was taking the garbage out? And I don't know if they collapsed on top of the wristband, on top of their hand, and maybe the guy like rolled him over and touched him and all sorts of stuff. And it only takes a second of exposure to COVID before you've got a problem. So good morning to Keisha. So good to see you. Louisa, good morning. Megan, thank you for joining us. Catherine is here. Miss Sue is here. Miss Sue said that she just read this about the PR question, and it's shocking. No way that they can get PR. Well, the funny thing is, I don't think the person even understands, as a spouse of a Caymanian, what you're entitled to. Because if I recall correctly, you don't actually require any references for that application. So shall go to the immigration website and read the legal position, because I think they're asking a question and they're asking for references that doesn't apply to because what they would get is a rights to work certificates, PREC or whatever they call it. And that's not the same thing exactly as a regular PR application. So I think they're a little bit confused, but they threw everything in that women's group. And Caymanians are like, you know what is so funny? Caymanians be hell of annoyed and insulted by the questions and the post about, oh, I've just gotten another job working in a restaurant. We're going to talk about restaurants here in a second. And, you know, I've never been to the Cayman Islands before and blah, blah, blah. And people are like, hold on a second. How are you coming from Timbuktu and getting a job in the Cayman Islands? And there are Caymanians here who can't even find an opportunity. Like, it really is legit crazy. And it gives the appearance. And again, I always say this, for a lot of people, perception is reality. So the perception is all of these people, because you see at least one or two a week. Oh, my husband is coming. He's just gotten hired and da-da-da-da. And it's kind of like the perception is immigration or works is handing out work permits left, right, and center. I don't think that they're handing out any more work permits than they used to, but that is certainly the perception. And so people are getting annoyed that during the lockdown and during, you know, what the government says is repatriation flights only, there are a lot of people who are still coming into the Cayman Islands on a work permit and on a job offer. So Ms. Carol says, but they knew he was positive. Were they not keeping a check on him to see how he was doing? Sounds like he may have had other health illnesses. So Carol, let me just clarify that position, because we did send across a number of questions about the situation, because we were a little bit confused as well. And here's what we know. So remember, in our store, we had the exclusive that entire household, because of this, with at least 4 people, had to go into quarantine at the Holiday Inn. The HSA and public health wouldn't confirm or deny that. So they say that they initially were confused, thinking I was referring to an HSA building. But, you know, they said that some of their staff, out of an abundance of caution, have been put in isolation. And so the question wasn't about HSA, it was about a private residence. And they said that they would not answer any questions due to confidentiality concerns. Well, honey, child, please, you all know that we don't need them to confirm it. We know what the story is. And quite ironically, you know, we have the exact address if we wanted it. We don't care about that part. We're not going to share it. It's just in central Georgetown is what people need to know. But there's at least 4 persons in the household. And at least 2 of those persons work for a meat distributor company. And so then there are questions about their exposure and, potential exposure from people at work. So Carol, when we reached out to public health, we also inquired about his vaccination status. So I can tell you he was an unvaccinated person. And for every single person who is ho-humming about getting vaccinated and who say that they don't want to do it, this is where the vaccine actually makes a significant difference. You can still get COVID if you're vaccinated. We know that. And but where it will give you the most protection is when it comes to hospitalization and more serious cases. So it will help you on the infection side. So the chances of you getting it are certainly reduced and not as likely. The chances of you transmitting it are not as likely. But sorry. But when it comes to actually, getting in the hospital, which would be most people's concerns, like you're dying from it sort of thing, or you're going to have a long hospital stay and then you're going to end up with long COVID as well. That is where this makes a huge difference. And that's the protection that you get. So I think people need to think about it seriously. There's a lot of people and a lot of misinformation that I still see circulating in the community in reference to the vaccine and, people dying right now in the minds of people in this community, they want to link every single death. Like, the first question is, well, did a person get vaccinated? Oh, they had a heart attack. Did they get vaccinated? They had a blood clot. They had a stroke. And I'm just like, people die from heart attacks, blood clots, cancer, stroke every single day. So why do you think that there's a vaccination link all of a sudden? Well, they died a week after vaccinated. Okay. I ate a burger last week and I died today. Is it the burger's fault that I just had a heart attack? Well, maybe if I had a lifetime of eating burgers, that was probably a contributing factor. But you can't say a single meal is what really did me in because I had a heart attack. And it's just like, I don't know why the human brain has a way of trying to make connections a lot of times that simply are not there. So there is this allegation that we have had more deaths since May, since I guess the vaccine started, than ever before. We're checking those numbers because we want to compare them to last year, the same period of time, to see, what the position is. And I can assure you, I haven't spoken to anyone in the funeral business, but I don't think we've had any more deaths than normal. Maybe because y'all are all in still virtual lockdown, you kind of hear about everybody that's dying. I don't know. So the other question was whether or not the person tested positive upon entry. And the response was no, the person did not test positive on arrival. So y'all know. This goes back to the importance of the quarantine. And that is why, although we're going to be doing the 5-day quarantine as of today's date, the new regulations will come out today. We cannot allow people who are unvaccinated to not do their full 14-day quarantine because you see the risk. You come in not 72 hours before, because that starts back today. He would have been tested at the airport and he tested negative. And here we are 2 weeks later, the guy is dropping down with COVID. So we don't know yet. I asked them if it was like the Delta variant. Apparently they don't have that information as yet. We actually have to send that query through to the chief medical officer. They said that he would disseminate that. And then the question, going back to what Carol is saying, is are people in quarantine checked daily? Because again, we've heard this where a lot of people have said they've been in quarantine and they've never, ever been checked on. And I said for both home quarantine and government quarantine. And they have said that public health officials check in persons in quarantine who have tested positive. This case was quarantining alone at a private residence. So kind of weird that they worded it that way, which means to me, because he tested negative upon entry, he wasn't necessarily being checked on. So they don't have, Carol, a fast rule about who is being checked on when they're in quarantine. This is what I surmise. This is my personal opinion and what I surmise from what people have said to me, how they've answered that question, and what I know about certain situations. It's very random. And with as many people as they have currently in quarantine, I think the randomness of it versus how many employees they have makes it impossible really for them to check on every single person who's in quarantine. So that is a little bit concerning. So, one guy was saying to me yesterday that he actually was in quarantine and got checked on like 2-3 times while he was in quarantine. And by comparison, his girlfriend was in quarantine and she never got checked on at all. So I don't know if they just thought he was high risk because he was a guy, or kind of what criteria they would have utilized to determine the level of risk. But quite interestingly enough, they checked on him more and didn't check on her at all. So if it's that arbitrary, I don't really know what to tell you, except it's just luck of the draw. So that's how they caught that film director guy without his wristband, him and the nanny, in the pool together, because they were just doing a random check. He would have continued to do that every single day that he was in quarantine had they not someone just drove by and did a random check. And I think that speaks to the importance of random checks and why they have to be amped up. But of course, again, the more people you put into quarantine, the less likely that is to even be feasible, because they've only got so many people employed with the Travel Cayman team. So there's that. And, they have said, so public health has said that there's no need for people to be concerned. The people that they felt needed to be in isolation have been identified and have been isolated. So let me just remind you, we've had over 89,000 COVID-19 vaccinations that have been given in total in the Cayman Islands. Of those, 47,419, which is 67% of this adjusted population of 71,100, have had at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, and approximately 69% have had 2 doses. So keep in mind, folks, that the magic number that they're trying to get to, that 59% with the 2 doses, they're trying to get that up to 80% before we can feasibly feel relatively safe at reopening the borders. But relatively safe isn't going to mean that there will not be any infections, obviously. And there's certain rules when you go to get your vaccine. So I actually need to check my vaccination card today, because I think I'm now due for my 2nd shot. And so I'm going to go in and do that. And I'm going to chronicle my journey as I did with the first one. So I'll let you guys know when I go in and get mine done. And, if I have any ill effects from it, I will let you know that as well. So buenos dias, Elizabeth. Miss Anne Marie is here. Good morning, Miss Doreen. Gladys, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, Vanessa. Louis, PPE, thank you for reminding me of what it was called. Doreen says, good morning to everyone. Mazine is here. Irvlin said, yes, you need references for that, Sandy. You need references for the PR, what's it called again? The rights to work, RE, whatever. I don't recall. I mean, it's been a minute since I've obviously applied for my husband's rights to work certificate. Is that what it's called? I don't recall. I'll look it up, and we can certainly residency with employment rights is what it's called. So yes, I'll have a look at it. But it's so bizarre. So the applicant must be dependent children. Yeah, we'll look at that a little bit later on. We've got guests who are waiting to jump in, so let's go ahead and invite them in. So Cayman Vlogs, thank you for logging on. Luis says, love the show and love the Cayman Islands. I've been there before, joining us from Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much, Luis. Vernita is here. Good morning to you, my love. And Elizabeth, let's get to that question here in a second, because that kind of relates to employment and the tourism sector for sure. Darlene says, I want to know, how is this man in quarantine and mingle with others at the same time? So he wasn't mingling. He actually passed out. So he probably was following all the rules. Like, they don't think he's breached quarantine in any way. Apparently you're able to, again, going back to this thing, the discussion we were having last week, but people who hang out on a boat that's adjacent to the property, you are allowed, if you're quarantining alone and on a property or with a couple or whatever family, you can go out in the yard. You can go to the garbage. And it does, as you can see, bring up certain situations, like what happens if somebody just drops down and bloop, and you're walking by, you're like, oh my gosh. Quarantining alone, I think, has certain inherent risk. If you have any health issues, folks, I wouldn't advise you to quarantine alone, because as we saw with a Caymanian some weeks back who died at the Holiday Inn, I doubt, in all honesty, that there would have been anything that anyone could have done for him. I heard, what caused his death. And it's just one of those things, like literally people drop down dead every single day. And I suppose the view of many is, when it's your time, and there's probably not much that's going to be able to help you. Having someone there, at least they can kind of be like, oh, I was there with him. Okay. It doesn't necessarily, I think, it's not going to stop the death, depending on the severity of what happens to them. Sometimes if you have access to like a defibrillator or something else, you might be able to assist the person. I don't think in this case that this would have assisted him because of the manner of death. But it just is, it is what it is, unfortunately. So Mary said, so had he fallen into the category of the 5-day quarantine and tested negative, so he would not have qualified. So let me be very, very clear here. This is why, again, you got to think logically about the vaccine process. He wouldn't have qualified for 5-day quarantine because he's not vaccinated. So vaccination gives you something like a 98%, once you've had both shots, protection in terms of hospitalization, serious illness and hospitalization. So the chances of him ending up in the ICU is relatively slim had he been vaccinated. So that's the only way, folks, that you can actually qualify. That's the number one criteria to be able to qualify to be considered for the 5-day quarantine, is you have to have been fully vaccinated with both dosages from, a reputable vaccine facility using one of the accepted vaccines. So we're not going to be taking no knockoff Chinese vaccine, which we know based on the research, those have not been working very well. So there's some vaccines that are available in other countries, India and around the world, that really are not up to the standard of the Pfizer vaccine or even the Moderna vaccine. So they would not qualify for the 5-day reduction. So I think you got to be really, really careful. So folks, go and have a look. I think, there's a lot of information out there about how much protection you get from the vaccine. Just 15 hours ago, they're literally studying everything about these vaccines, and people are like, oh, well, they don't know enough. You'd be surprised that things are being studied by different groups. So here's a new study that came out just 15 hours ago, yesterday morning, 8:40 a.m., almost 24 hours now. New research published in JAMA has found that there's no difference in sperm perimeters in 45 men who received the mRNA vaccine. So some of you might be concerned, I suppose, about sperm production. My camera just literally said it was overheating and it shut off. That is so weird. Had not seen that before. So let's just give that a little break and see what's happening there. We might have to give Sony a call and be like, yo, what's going on here? So yeah, they're studying all angles of this, all associated illnesses and so on. But the bottom line is the protection that you get, the protective benefits, definitely far outweigh any concerns that you may have. But they continue to study the efficacy of this vaccine. along with everything else. So thank you, Alma. It's RERC, Rights to Work Residency Certificate, I think is what it's supposed to be. Residency with Employment Rights Certificate. Christopher says, good morning, Chris. I've been in quarantine 3 times and the team randomly checked in me. They would call or show up at my residence and even ask if I needed anything. Thanks to Travel Cayman for all that you do. Well, that's good to hear. But I'm telling you legit, there have been people who have said they have not received those random checks, not at all. Richie confirms that you do need 3 references. All right. Well, she better find some Caymanian friends. We've got Troy Leacock, Laurent Baden, and Luigi Moxham joining us this morning. Luigi, I think, is at work, and he's showing us a beautiful scene from his workplace with the ocean view, the cabana. Should we not be so lucky to all be there right now? And I'm going to just pull Luigi out so he can get situated back in front of the camera. But we're going to be talking about employment in tourism, especially for Caymanians. And, you know, there was a comment that was posted on social media last week that got, I think, a lot of feedback that kind of kicked off this discussion. And yes. So someone was mentioning what I could potentially do about my camera situation. It's weird because obviously I'm not outside with this camera, so it shouldn't be facing any excessive heat. Obviously, I mean, it is in use, so I will definitely check that out. But yes, so we've got some restaurant, there's Luigi. We've got some restaurant managers and owners here who are going to talk to us very, very frankly this morning about, as a Caymanian, if you're interested in tourism generally and specifically in the restaurant business, what are some of the things that you need to expect and be ready for? Some of the realities, I think, of being in this industry. So the post that initially kicked off this discussion was posted by The Wharf, which looks like they're a group that owns both The Wharf and Grand Ole House. I guess it's the same owners, which I never even knew that. So that's kind of interesting. But, you know, they basically were talking about their inability really to attract a lot of Caymanians to the restaurant business. And they've said, you know, they put on apprenticeship opportunities. They've encouraged people to come on board in terms of like training opportunities and so forth. And unfortunately, the response from Caymanians have been, I guess, lackluster at best. And so here was the original post that went up. And it says that we received 63 inquiries. All were invited to an interview. 32 had scheduled interviews, of which 8 did not show up. 24 got offered and scheduled a paid training tryout. 9 did not show up. And we were able to enroll 10 Caymanians in our paid training. They're trying hard and have all the potential to get a full-time job with us or within the industry. When you see them around training, share some encouragement. And then we at Grand Ole House and The Wharf have always done that and will continue to do so. Therefore, we have questions, and we're going to talk about some of these questions here. It seems like Grand Ole House and The Wharf says that, you know, why is our industry publicly blackmailed into a hiring if you want the border open scheme when we can hardly pay our expenses? So that's a question for management that maybe Troy and Luigi can speak to. Laurent, I don't know if he can speak to that or not. That's probably not his end of things. And then the other question is, why is the only pandemic ravaged industry tasked with solving the unemployment issues of the islands? So let's kick off, I think, the discussion in terms of that. Troy, good morning to you. Give us a little bit of background, Troy, and, you know, from your perspective and what you bring to the table. Why are you even qualified to talk about this? You work in the restaurant business, you own restaurants. Tell us what's going on.
Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, guys. Yeah, so my primary business, as many of your viewers probably know, is Crazy Crab Private Boat Charters. But I also own or co-own Vivo Restaurant in West Bay. I think as a small business Caymanian owner, I see both sides of the challenge in getting more Caymanians into the tourism industry, and I think that it's important to start off by saying that this is a very important issue for us, because I think that we're one of the few countries in the world where a visitor can come here, spend a week, and possibly not even encounter a single Caymanian. So I think the big picture is that, we have to do this. We have to get more Caymanians in our tourism industry. It's really, really important. If you go back to, the early 60s, late 60s, when people just started to come here, when, there were more, situations with mosquitoes and swamps and all that sort of thing. But the beaches were empty and people used to just come here. It was really us Caymanians that drew them here. And I think what's happening now is our visitor experience is becoming to the point where Caymanians are almost no more relevant. Our history is no longer relevant. Our culture is no longer relevant. And we need to stop that. So it's really, really important for us to get more Caymanians and get more Caymanian culture and history into our tourism sector. But it is a very complex subject, and we need to come at it from all angles. So yeah, I run small businesses. A lot of the employment in the tourism industry is large industry, large businesses. So I think that they need to speak to it as well. But I think the three of us here can probably certainly talk from small and medium-sized businesses and on what do we need to do to get more Caymanians in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Luigi, good morning to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you're poised to be involved in today's discussion? What's your personal experience? Uh-oh. We can't hear you.
Good morning.
Oh, there you go. Good morning.
Okay. Morning. Appreciate the invite to have this conversation. I've had Cayman Cabana 9 years this week, actually, and I've been
Uh-oh. You might be having a little bit of an issue there with your connection, Luigi. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that again.
Yeah, so I've been in the tourism industry for pretty much all my life. That's mostly all my work experience. Independently as an entrepreneur, last 16 years with 1345 and 9 years with Cayman Cabana. So I turns what everyone's referring to and trying to comprehend the bigger picture of the what the true position is, or where we've been and why we've got to this position, and what we're forward to improve it. As far as attracting Caymanians out to industry, to the tourism industry. I don't think it can be tied to one particular element, because there's various aspects between tourism and hospitality, and we've always had a popular. We've all been a popular destination in regards to being a hospitable destination. So where it's happened, people want to get involved in that industry from an employment standpoint. I'm sure where that really got disconnected, but there's a lot of things that needs to be improved in that. So, but I just want to contribute to the conversation and appreciate having me here.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sue gives a personal shout out to Luigi. Laurent Bodden is also joining us. It's so nice to see 100% Caymanian faces this morning, actually. So this should be a rather interesting discussion. Laurent, tell us a little bit about your experience in the tourism industry, at the restaurant specifically business, and what you're hoping to contribute to the conversation today.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So, like Miss Sandy said, I'm Lauren Bodden. I've been working in the hospitality industry for about 7, 8 years. Started out in water sports, red sales. I did an internship at Ritz-Carlton, so I went all over in events, did a little bit of housekeeping, got a little bit of taste of restaurants at the Ritz and Grand Ole House, and I fell in love with it. I've been working at Grand Ole House in between the war for about 6 years, since 2015. I started as a busser, food runner, host, and bar back, doing all the 9 yards. Learned everything I could about it, and became a server eventually after 2 years. And then I eventually went off to school to Johnson and Wales in 2019. With the help of DOT and Grand Ole House and McCormick, I was able to afford to go to school, and I'm completing in August, and I'm currently the restaurant manager at the Grand Ole House. So that's a short glimpse of my story. I intend to give to this conversation basically my take on unemployment in the hospitality industry and things that we can do to improve it and make it even more worthwhile for those coming into it. I want to see more Caymanians in my industry, in our industry. Apologies, and that's my aim for this.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So let's talk about this idea that there appears to be a burden. And this goes back to, again, the question that was posed by Grand Ole House and Wharf, that there appears to be a burden on the one industry that has been, and that's for sure, impacted the most, which is tourism, that there seems to be an undue burden on them to resolve the employment issue. When I saw that, the thing that occurred to me is I don't think it's a burden. It's just that right now the industry that has the most unemployed people would definitely be tourism. So I don't think it's like people that are jumping from financial services or other sectors all of a sudden jumping up and saying, "Oh, I want to get involved in the restaurant business, or I want to get involved in tourism." So I don't know, but you guys tell me, because you're there every single day. Is that what's happening? Are you seeing people coming into your industry so that you're feeling overburdened now, or do you feel like the government is putting undue pressure on the restaurant and tourism industry to take in people who it hadn't had before? Like, I'm a little bit confused with that idea that the tourism industry is somehow now being overburdened to support Caymanians or solve the unemployment problem that exists in this country. Can you guys speak to that specific point?
You want to take that, Laurent, or since it was your company that made the statement in the first place?
Yeah, I can take it. I'd prefer not to get too political regarding that area, but in the industry, like, we've always, always been hiring Caymanians. And there were Caymanians there before I went to Grand Ole House. There are Caymanians there now. And I assume, it's more or less just we're trying, and we need some support. So I don't know where else I could take that for you. But as much as the restaurants are not at full capacity, it's not easy for any restaurant to do business right now in this current situation, as for many other businesses. So just from that perspective, I don't want to dive too deep on that.
Right.
Yeah, Sandy, I think
sure.
That there's a difference between tourism workers that are unemployed and unemployed Caymanians, right? And it's one thing about saying, okay, the people that are on the stipend that have been in tourism, we need to make sure that when we reopen or in preparation for reopen, that we get those people back to work. But if you take the water sports industry, for example, we have people that are working a few hours a week for us, that as soon as we reopen, or even prior to reopening, as we start to get bookings and things like that, we will remobilize these individuals. So they're unemployed, but they're not. But really, they're not unemployed. They're hibernating. They're waiting to be redeployed. That's very different than unemployed Caymanians. And I think that what we need to do is we need to make sure that the unemployed tourism Caymanians are redeployed properly as we get ready for reopening. But I think that the point that was possibly met in the post is that the industry that has been on its knees for the last 15 months, that is literally struggling to survive, certainly cannot be tasked with not only remobilizing the tourism employees that are waiting to get back to work, but also address the general unemployment issue amongst Caymanians. It's virtually impossible. And I think that maybe the two intentions are not aligned. I think that, perhaps when the government talks about making sure that Caymanians are put back to work, I would like to believe that they're talking about experienced Caymanians or Caymanians experienced in tourism get back to work, not saying all Caymanians that are unemployed and have been unemployed for years suddenly have to be now mobilized for work by the one sector that is literally struggling to survive, because that just doesn't make any sense, right? So I think there's a misalignment there, and I think that also speaks to one of the general problems that we have generally in Cayman, but certainly with this particular subject, is that there's no use sitting across the table and pointing fingers at each other. At some point we got to get around the table and roll up our sleeves. And I am a passionate advocate for getting more Caymanians into the tourism sector. It is vitally important, particularly in frontline, and particularly in order to make sure that we give our visitors an experience that includes Caymanian culture, history, language, accent, and all of those things. But it's not a simple solution to that. That is just like, well, pay more money, recruit more Caymanians. It's not that at all, because we have to not only train Caymanians, but we need to find them in the first place, right? And every business in Cayman knows the struggle. We only have so many Caymanians, and those Caymanians, especially the very good ones, are working or running their own businesses. So it's not like there's this whole labor pool of talented, experienced, unemployed Caymanians that are out there, waiting for us to just dip into. I ran an ad, I don't know, maybe it was a month or so ago, on Facebook for 48 I ran it for 48 hours. I stopped it after 48 hours. It was a weekend, part-time food and beverage server. And in 48 hours, I got 67 applications. And it was just a Facebook post, right? It wasn't paid. It wasn't a paid ad. It wasn't in the Compass. It wasn't on EK or anything. I had to stop the ad because I had 67 applications.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot. I think that Minister of Tourism and Transport, Kenneth Bryan, has just indicated that he will join the program with us here shortly. But I think when you say that there's a misalignment I think that there's a misunderstanding on the part of the industry. If that's how the industry is thinking, that they have been charged with solving the unemployment, and of course the minister can speak to this, the unemployment issue, I think that is fundamentally incorrect, because I don't think anyone is asking the tourism sector to do that. I think that what is being asked of restaurants, like any other business, is that if you're going to hire, so we're in this pandemic, we're hoping that we can get to that 80% vaccination rate and start to slowly reopen. Tourism will pick back up. We will have people back on our island. The idea is COVID, because it has shut down that particular sector, it has given people or that sector a opportunity for in excess of a year to maybe evaluate and reevaluate their position with certain hiring practices, how they are using their available resources and how they're being inclusive or not of Caymanians in that environment. And I think that is what the government is encouraging people to do, restaurant owners, managers, retailers, whatever part of the tourism, even accommodations, which we're hoping to do definitely a part 2 of this, where we can speak to the accommodation sector as well and get some of their feedback. But I think the idea is, listen, we've been on pause for a minute. Yes, there are a lot of people already in that industry who are working. There's a lot of people who actually went home. And as a result of that, you now have those positions that are theoretically available as we start to reopen. Why go the extra mile to bring people back from halfway around the world when you have a talent pool that is local and available? And perhaps it is now in the best interest of everyone to try to fill your existing job vacancies with Caymanians, who obviously we're going to talk about here, have to be willing to take up those opportunities as well. Luigi, what's your take on the question? Do you believe that the tourism sector, restaurants in particular, for this morning's discussion, are being overburdened with trying to fix Cayman's employment issue? Do you get the sense that that's what's happening?
I can understand their perspective on how that comes across, just because the reality is that we are, like so many other people, we're heavily burdened on trying to survive with what we have already, even if it, so trying to take that on. Put it this way, it goes back to you have to want to work anywhere. You have to want to. You have to want to be prepared to sacrifice for what tasks at hand in order for you to come through the ranks to get to where you want to go. I commend. Never met him, but sir, I commend you on your journey throughout the hospitality industry as a busser and so forth. There's a lot of people who are just not attracted to making that kind of effort and that sacrifice to we have one of the best ministries, one of the best tourism departments in the entire Caribbean. Throughout the entire industry in the Cayman Islands, where the disconnect is, where Caymanians have, the perception is that we're not attracted to work in the industry. Goes back to maybe the last 1 or 2 generations where our great-grandparents were the face of hospitality, were the face of tourism, could identify and relate with those people. And then 80s, 90s, people, felt that maybe be better opportunities as the financial industry started, that there's more opportunities, better opportunities. I don't want you to have to clean houses. I don't want you to have to bartend. I don't want you to have to work as hard as I did in this industry to survive. So they encourage on to other industries. That doesn't mean that it's a bad industry. That doesn't mean good for that. You have to humble yourself if you're unemployed to be advised with any opportunity. Opportunities aren't even guaranteed. It's just an opportunity to put yourself in a position for further opportunities down the road. There's a difference between being unemployable, unemployed and unemployable. It's like there's a perception and an attitude that people have on what Caymanians bring to the table in our own hospitality industry, and it's scary to see and to hear some of the stories out there and the perception before people.
We're having a little bit of a connection issue there, Luigi. I'm going to make a suggestion, Luigi, sorry. Refresh your connection. I don't know if you're on Wi-Fi or if you're actually on LTE, but believe it or not, I'm just going to pull you off the screen for a second here. Sometimes being an LTE, I have personally found with live streaming, gives you a better connection than Wi-Fi. I know it sounds crazy, but because you're probably the only one who's on your LTE connection, I find that sometimes switching and turning off the Wi-Fi is your better option, because if you're in Wi-Fi, you probably got other people trying to share that Wi-Fi network and so on. And it's not often as fast. So I think we have two things, folks, that have already been identified here as possible issues of concern. The first one, by the way, stick a pin. Can I tell you guys, you know that since the election, I have not seen our Guti. Like, I legit haven't seen him. This morning, he literally passed right by the window. He was taking his time, looked nice and plump and fat. So I think he's been like in hibernation, going the same route as usual. So I didn't see him go in the one direction, but I saw him coming back. And I was just so tickled pink. Like, I was trying to capture him on camera, but he walked off a little bit quickly. But I was so tickled pink to see him this morning. So no one has eaten my neighborhood agouti yet. Don't think about it. He's still hanging around, and I think it's a he or she. I don't know. Still here, still doing good. Taking a little family break. But yeah, apparently still good. Wonderful. So I was just so happy to see that agouti just now. We do have the Minister of Tourism and Transport, Kenneth Bryan, also here joining the discussion. So I'm going to pull him into the studio. We're going to give Luigi just a second. Good morning, Minister Bryan.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Kim and Mile Road. Good morning to your guests, and good morning, Sandra.
So I see that you changed up your position in the yard from where you normally join us, and I quite like this view of, I don't know if that's a mango tree or what kind of tree that is in the background.
That was soursop tree.
That's soursop. Okay, nice.
That's good, that's good for your nerves. Good for your nerves.
So you will definitely be drinking a lot of soursop juice over the next couple of years. Everything with soursop, Kenneth is like, throw it in the recipe. So this idea, I think that Caymanians don't want to work in tourism. I thought it was very interesting that Luigi brought this up, because I do think that there's definitely some truth to this. The other day I was speaking to Miss Irma, and I have a lot of interesting conversations with Miss Irma. And I read this book, eons ago, called The Millionaire Next Door. If you've never read it and you want to learn a little bit about financial freedom and some of the things that perhaps you need to focus on to eventually have the financial freedom as you get closer to retirement or whatever, this is a must-read book. This should be in your top 10. The Millionaire Next Door looks at the habits of millionaires. There's a lot of things that millionaires do that are habit forming that actually contribute to them being as successful as they are. Now, quite interestingly enough, one of the things that millionaires do, for example, is they don't tend to get divorced. And that might sound like, well, what does that have to do with anything? But you know what happens when you get divorced? Your spouse is going to get half of it, the lawyer's going to get the other half, and you're going to be left with two little pence. So it's important to know what some of the habits are. The other interesting thing that Luigi just touched on that I think Cayman is suffering from a little bit is first generation millionaires. They have all these habits, they've examined them. The book then went as far as looking at their children and looking at second generation millionaires to see how they did on their own, even with the help of daddy or mommy, having grown up in this more affluent environment. It actually found that they were less likely to become millionaires in their own right. And you know why? And this is so incredibly interesting. Millionaires became millionaires through like industries. So they were working in like the garbage industry, service industries. They, started new companies, whatever. Their children, who they wanted to have a better life, for lack of a better word, didn't want them to work quite as hard, wanted them to be a quote unquote professional. They were pushing into jobs like, oh, you have to become a lawyer, you have to become a doctor. And all of those professions, although they're considered, professionals, they have a long tenure of, oh, you have to be in school forever to become a doctor. Right? So if you want to be a heart surgeon, you don't just jump up tomorrow and be like, I'm going to be a heart surgeon, I'm going to start earning from day one. You have to go through a pre-med program. You have to go through medical school. You have to go through an internship. You have to establish a clientele that's going to take you 10, 15 years. So by the time they were starting to potentially become millionaires like their parents, they were like close to retirement. And so the desire for parents to push their children into certain professions is not always something that gets them closer to financial freedom. And I think this is one of the truths that we must accept about the Cayman context, right? Even as it relates to tourism. A lot of our children have been told that you don't want to work in tourism. That's hard work. That's laborious. You're going to be bussing tables. You're going to be doing all sorts of things. What they instead encourage them to do was to become a professional, and not even like sometimes a qualified professional. Oh, child, go sit in the bank where you can sit on a chair in front of the air conditioner all day, counting somebody else's money. And a lot of those bank tellers do not make the kind of money that you can working in a restaurant. So, Kenneth, what are your thoughts in relation to, I'm so glad again that Luigi brought that point up, but what are your thoughts in relation to this? Have we as Caymanians done our own children and our own Caymanian people a disservice by encouraging them to stay away from certain industries because maybe it's not as glamorous? Like you can't always put on a full face of makeup and heels to go work in a restaurant. You got to wear flat shoes so you don't slip and boink your head. Whereas sitting in financial services or sitting in a bank or whatever seems to be a more cushy job.
I don't necessarily believe that the parents have driven them away. I think they just didn't fully quite understand, because we have strong examples of Caymanians who were in the tourism industry for a very long time. The District of West Bay is a primary example of that. Many of West Bayers who are millionaires today made their life off of tourism. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have failed on of creating a program to solidify the continued education and understanding and benefits into tourism. We have failed on that as a community, as a government, and that will be my responsibility to at the same time getting the borders safely reopened, get Caymanians back to work, to have a continued program. And I am happy to say, and my good friend Troy Leacock is well aware of this, that's a part of the long-term plan. I think what I don't want people to confuse is the government's intention right now to get persons who are currently unemployed, who were employed before in tourism, back to work. I'm sorry that maybe there is a misunderstanding that the government is trying to get the tourism industry to fix the unemployment problem across the country. I think that would be unfair, because I do recognize that the industry is strapped at this particular point in many different angles. So we're not expecting them to take up the burden of unemployment that was there before. But realistically, I think it's fair to say that everybody would expect them to focus on the Caymanians who were in the industry before anybody else. And that's all we're saying. Because we have an obligation to take care of our own. And like you rightfully said, Sandra, earlier, it would be ludicrous to think that the industry would want to fly a person all the way from South Africa to come work in the Cayman Islands when we have a very large amount of people here. But I also say that recognizing that there isn't the biggest pool in the world here in the Cayman Islands that understands all areas of tourism. So there will be a little bit of that. All we're saying is that let's focus on those we have first. Where we have shortfalls, then the government will happily assist the industry with providing the outside labor that is necessary. But what we don't want is persons thinking that they can ignore the Caymanian working class in respect to tourism, and then just shoot for work permit holders first. That's against the government's policy, and the government's policy is to put Caymanians first, and we're going to hold hard on that, and do it in a responsible way. Hence the reason our communication and relationship with CETA is continuing. I've met with them up to just what's today, Wednesday? I don't even know what day of the week it is. On Monday, going through our plan of action. We have a survey that's going to be released this morning, actually, which is mandatory for all stipend recipients to
We just mentioned that it's actually live already.
Yeah. Oh, good. Perfect. So stipend recipients can fill that out, and then we can help the industry understand the pool better, the pool that Mr. Leacock was talking about, so they can use and draw from that pool first. Now, if there isn't enough persons there for them to facilitate the industry reopening, then of course we're going to assist them in every way we can to allow them to go outside of our borders to find labor, but also recognizing that you're not going to go at full complement in the first place. So, for example, if your company has 10 people normally to operate, right now you're probably operating at 2. And you're gonna, with the reopening, it's not going to be going straight back to 100%. So you may want to get to 7 persons, and normally you would have 5 of those 10 work permit holders. So what we're saying is, why don't you try to fill your complement first with Caymanians, and then that excess amount that you need, if you're going to say 70% of operations and the like, then we can top that off with work permit holders. What that does is helps the country on a holistic scale, because what we don't want is the country to continue to be in further debt. We have the FFR that we are obligated to be adhering to in respect to the UK approval of our new budget that has to come up in 2022. So there's other factors we have to think about, and just to put things in context, and I'll close off here to give somebody else a chance to speak. But to put things in context, we spend $5.5 million a year. $5.5 million a month on the stipend. Now, and that's outside of the other assistances that we offer to the industry, from health insurance, the stingray feeding program, the grants that we gave out. And I say we, I mean myself, our administration, the PAC administration, and the former administration, which has to be given a lot of credit for their continued assistance, which this government will continue to do as well. So it's a cost factor when we don't have a lot of money coming in. So we're just saying, let's all play our part here together. And as all 5 of us as Caymanians, I think it's fair to say that we want to put our people first. And like you rightfully said, I don't want to bring somebody from who was in the financial services first and say, well, you gotta give them a job. What we were trying to focus on mainly is we have a large amount of people who are already working in tourism, who already has the experience. Let's focus on them first and reanalyze a little bit later on after we see how the market performs.
So it's fair to say then that maybe some people in the industry have this misconception or this incorrect view that this government's position is that the tourism sector has been poised with, or somehow put the burden on them trying to solve the employment issues. So it's fair to say that that isn't the government's position, and that isn't where we're at with this. Yes?
I think that's fair to say, but I understand the level of frustration, particularly with that post. They've had a long, hard a year and a half. So, yes. I mean, what they just want is solutions and get things back to where they were. So the government takes no hard feelings.
Not where they were, because the argument is where they were isn't necessarily, or wasn't necessarily holistically beneficial to Caymanians. So let's be a bit more inclusive, I think, is where we want to be with people who are interested. Now, I'm curious to know, and of course, we're going to read some comments here in a second. Those of you who are listening to the program this morning, how many of you have just demonstrated an interest in the tourism industry, have applied, and have not had very much success in that regard? So let's read some of your comments. Ms. Iva, of course, is here. Thank you, Eden, for that comment. Elizabeth says hi to Troy. Celine, we'll get back to that vaccine conversation a bit later on. So Eden says 10 Caymanians are now in their paid training. That's about 15%. I think their letter is more about the unfair onus on them to fix tourism employment at a weak time than being about Caymanians not wanting to work in the industry. So I think that we've clarified that there isn't an expectation that they fix tourism, fix unemployment. I think the expectation is as we start to reopen that they need to look at some of the options of how to include more local talent in their numbers. Now, what is so incredibly interesting to me, and I know Laurent says, oh God, let's not get political in any way. Laurent, everything in life has a twinge of politics involved in it because this is the Cayman Islands and it's a very small country. So politicians make a decision or they don't make a decision. They don't act. It impacts all of us almost immediately. What I find interesting is now we shut down last year. What was it like about March, right? So we're a year and call it almost a year and a half through this COVID situation. And I have yet to see a real push. I know we set up, what's it called? Works and their portal, the job Cayman portal. And we've been telling people, oh, just go register there. And then hopefully those people will help you find something. But I have yet to seen a real push with training, for example. And this is at the heels of really the previous administration. They should have had these things in place. Hotels shut down completely. Why were we not saying let's have the Ritz? I don't think they're really 100% shut down, but just as an example, just throwing their name out there, let's have them do a 6-month hospitality program focused on just working in a high-class restaurant. Government will subsidize that. Government will help that. Let's have Cayman Cabana do a 6-month training program. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheels. These programs exist out there. And it's just a matter of deploying it. Have Cayman Cabana do a program on how to work because I think every restaurant has its uniqueness. Every tourism, every aspect of the tourism business has some unique factors, all based on deliverance of excellent customer service and a good product, obviously. But again, how people work in that environment. You've got the downtime, so it's not like you're super busy. You can take people in if they drop a tray. It's not like you got a million tourists off the boat going, oh my God, why are you training people while I'm here, sort of thing. You had the downtime. I think government could have subsidized this a little bit. The availability of resources was there now more than ever. And I didn't see any of that happen. I didn't see a hotel program coming on board where people got experience, do like a little rotation, a month in.
Well, Sandra, if I can interrupt you 1 second there. I agree with you wholeheartedly because it was such a missed opportunity. And when I became the Minister of Tourism, the first thing I was trying to find out is what kind of training programs can we put in place to quickly give people the skill sets they need for when we reopen. Now, as you know, there's expectations for us to open in very short order. Maybe within 2 months, 3 months, right? I can't give you a date yet because we haven't made that final date and cabinet for me to publicize. So, but that gives us limited amount of time to mobilize and get all these things rolling. We're actually doing some of it right now with CETA. I'm sorry that Troy left because Troy is very familiar with this.
Yeah, he's actually back. He just got disconnected.
Okay. So Troy would know exactly what I'm speaking of. So there'll be some sort of training that we're going to be rolling out soon, and that's happening behind the scenes. But I'm talking about over the last year. I think what would have been a great idea was that stipend money that is being offered should have been offered conditionally with training opportunities.
Of course.
But that wasn't considered. I'm not suggesting that the government failed. Maybe it was other reasons why they didn't want to do it. Maybe it was the regulations. I don't know. But it's a missed opportunity because now we're rushing. Legitimately, the industry wants to know that the person is prepared to do the job and qualified. I use that word reservingly, qualified, because that's up in the air in many places. But at least have a level of preparation ready for many of the posts that are available. But I don't think we're going to be able to get all that done within a short period of time. We're being pressed to open September 1st. I'm not saying that that's the date, but I'm saying we're pressed for that. And I don't think we can mobilize enough people on a large scale to getting all the skill sets that the industry would mandate or would like to see to do these jobs. So we're going to do as much as we possibly can. It's more of like a reopening type of training, saying, refresher courses, easy transition skills from one area of tourism to the other. that kind of thing, because the time is limited. Now, those potential obligations on receiving the stipend wasn't stipulated at the start of it, and it would be inappropriate of me as minister to now say, oh, you can no longer receive this stipend if you don't do these courses. People are now depending on that, so there's an expectation that I can't override. So we're trying to do whatever we can within the margin that is available to us, from time constraints, from what industry wants, and working together on this. So I just wanted to put that in context, that was a missed opportunity, sadly.
Sure.
But we are where we are right now.
Yep. I mean, for me, it's a huge missed opportunity, and it's kind of like, I look around. Of course, it's always easy to be a backseat driver, which I'll admit that's exactly what I am. I can look around and see things that, I think, wow, why aren't we fixing this? Why are we doing this? Even, Minister, with all due respect, just refreshing the waterfront. Why have we not taken this opportunity and slapped some new paint on the waterfront and try to make it look a little bit more decent? Cayman Brac, Cayman Brac is so beautiful in so many respects. I was there the other day, and I went to the lighthouse, which is one of my favorite places to go. It's just so peaceful and serene, and you get to see the beautiful birds at that facility. And they have a little like model Cayman house there that has been broken down and dilapidated for quite some time. And it's just like little things. I'm like, why aren't we sprucing up and fixing our tourism product when we have had this opportunity to do so? I mean, there's so many training programs in my mind that could have been rolled out during the last 18 months, and it just simply hasn't been done. So I know the minister.
We are limited on cash, So many departments and ministries and government-owned companies are asked to limit their spending. So that could be a reason why you don't see as many things that could be possible if cash was available not being done.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're going to pay for it one way or the other. So, I mean, you're either going to pay for it through the training and fixing things up, or you're going to pay on the tail end. But anyway, let's read a few more comments. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to a couple of things that the minister mentioned. Hopefully, I won't drop out. My Wi-Fi won't drop out. Certainly, the 3,300 that are receiving the tourism stipend. Let's taking it at face value that all of these people are genuinely from the tourism industry, that all of these people were employed immediately before the pandemic. I actually am not in the least bit concerned about that pool of people being able to be re-employed. My water sports business, for example, I had 10 employees, and I had 2 work permits. So that sort of leaves 8. The 2 work permit holders are no longer here. So that leaves 8 people that were in my company. Well, one of those has actually transitioned to a whole other industry. So of the pool of people that were within my company, we're anxiously awaiting the reopening, and we will be fully redeployed. So if you take that across the board, I think absolutely we will have thousands of people redeployed once we reopen our borders and we actually rebuild the visitor numbers. And that's important, right? Because if we have a soft opening that takes us 6 months to ramp back up to the volumes that we had before, then obviously all of these people are not going to be redeployed immediately. And very importantly, those that are hourly paid will also not have a full-time 40 hours a week type of pay packet. So it's important to recognize that, there's the preparing for reopening, there's the reopening, and then there's the rebuilding. But having said what I've just said, there is one sector of tourism employees that I think that we need to pay particular attention to, and those are the employees that are related to the cruise industry. Now, let me just give you an example. Let's say you're a 60-year-old guy with a boat that's been in the industry for 20 plus years, right? So you've got a boat, you've been waiting patiently for the reopening, but your boat is geared towards, it's a 70-seater boat, is geared towards cruise, mass tourism. Now, we are sitting down here talking like, oh, we need to transition this guy to the hotel industry. Well, he's sitting there thinking to himself, well, I want to wait for reopening because I've been doing this my whole life. I want to be on the water. I want to be in this sector. I've got my life savings invested in my boat. He is not going to say, oh yeah, the Ritz are holding, whatever, an open day. Let me go and become a concierge at the Ritz. So it's really important for government and industry to work together and almost have like a cruise reopening or a cruise reimagining working group, because we've got to figure out, how is cruise going to come back? Is it going to come back in the same way that it was pre-pandemic, or is it going to look differently? So the point that I'm making is that the people that we're saying, hey, we need to remobilize you, we need to attract you to shift or upskill or cross-skill, they're sitting down, they're actually trying to figure out themselves what to do with their own lives. Should I actually give up my business and go and get retrained? So I don't think it's for the want of desire and ambition, especially amongst the entrepreneurs. It's really a question of what is the landscape? What should I do? What's right for my future? We don't want tourism employees cross-training to go to the Ritz, and then 3 months or 4 months when cruise reopens, then they all leave the Ritz to go back to their boats, which have been sitting in their front yards waiting to be redeployed, right? So we got to take a holistic view of this. But I think
Troy, I hear you, and please forgive me because I agree with you on that point. But we're in a rock between a rock and a hard place, because the flip side of that is, okay, I'm worried about that as an industry player, so I'm going to get a work permit holder to make them do the job while the Caymanian doesn't get the job, because I'm worried about that. And then the taxpayers, you and I, managed by myself as minister on behalf of the park administration, has to pay that cost for your worry. I think we're obligated morally as Caymanians to play this push and pull game until we figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You understand? So unfortunately, I hear your concern is legitimate, but we don't have the option of focusing on others. We have to focus on our people first, because not only is it the right thing to do, it's also the most cost-effective thing to do for the government. Think about this. We're estimating about close to $9 million. Not, let me rephrase that. A little over $8 million a month in cost for this. For something we also haven't highlighted the numbers of persons who are at NAU as a result of not being working, who are getting food vouchers, who are getting child care support, all these other factors. So do you I don't think that the country wants later on, 6 months from now, things are so dire that we go, you know what, we're gonna have to introduce some new taxes here. That's not what we want. And we also want the approval of the UK. If they don't see a good financial model of us being able to handle taking care of our people, they're going to take action. And that's what we're trying to avoid, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I guess really what I'm trying to lay out there is that I really do believe that the employable tourism Caymanians are really ready to be redeployed. And we're literally waiting anxiously here. And the biggest driver of that is actually reopening and rebuilding our visitor base. This is not a long-term chronic unemployment problem amongst the tourism employees. Believe you me, we are ready to get back to work, But the other point that I'd like to make is that when I was speaking earlier, where we ran an ad on Facebook for 48 hours and we got 67 applications, only 2 of those applications were Caymanians. So there is actually a large pool of people who are on the island with work permits that are underemployed. Basically, they're working fewer hours, they're sleeping on a friend's sofa at night and whatnot. So I think that there are almost 3 pools of people we need to look to when we talk about remobilizing employment for the tourism industry. Those persons shouldn't be here right now. Well, I take your point, but I think that the reality is they have a work permit, they're working, right? So I'm not saying that they're not working, I'm saying that they're underemployed. So in other words, where they
the work permit, this is a problem.
They're breaking the law is what they're doing, because people transitioning from one job to the other is ruining the employment opportunities for Caymanians protection.
Right,
but that is the type of stuff we need to get rid of.
But as we redeploy now, right, there are 3 pools of people from which to draw. There are the Caymanians, there are the work permit holders who are here, and then there are the work permit holders who will have to be brought in. And I think that just the simple point that I'm trying to make is that we must not assume that if industry requires 2,000 work permits, that all of those have to be brought into the country is the point that I'm making, because obviously the concerns that were expressed about housing and things like that. So there are a pool of people here, and we just need to we need to bring everything to bear on what do we need to do. So I'm absolutely saying we go for Caymanians, but also recognizing that the non-Caymanian or the posts that are not ultimately filled by Caymanians don't necessarily mean new residents having to be brought to the island. I really believe that there's a pool here on the island that will actually be able to be more fully employed as well.
Yeah. So let me just pick up a little bit more on the minister's point there, Troy. During the lockdown, the government said, listen, as these hotels started to shut their doors, they said, you've got to, if you have to terminate individuals or you have to get rid of people, it should not be a Caymanian first situation for that. So it shouldn't be Caymanian first for termination. Or redundancies. It should be the foreign worker and the expat worker first, who has an option of actually going somewhere else, going back home and having their own governments support them. Now, I'm very much aware, because there's a particular boutique hotel on West Bay Road that I get constant complaints about, that they were actually letting go the Caymanian staff first and foremost in keeping their foreign staff. And this is where now the inequality or the inequality that we often talk about from the perspective of the Caymanians raises its ugly head, because that should not be the case, where you have existing workers. And when you seek to get rid of people, you'd much rather keep the work permit workers, oftentimes because it's the kind of mentality where you feel like you can treat them anyway. You can have them work excess hours. You can be like Margaritaville and do whatever you want in terms of, their pension payments and other insurance. And they're not going to speak up. Nothing's going to be done about it because they're not Caymanian, right? So there's that situation, which is a clear breach of the law, allowing people to stay here. I've seen people here on work permits who actually have no employment. And their work permit wasn't turned in. They've not been asked to leave. As you say, they're jumping on somebody's couch, rolling from post to pillar, and that is somehow acceptable. That is illegal, and it shouldn't be allowed. But let's read a few of the comments. Francis says that Caymanians do not want to work. So this is an often repeated bit of fake news or misinformation, but we have to address it. And why do people feel that Caymanians do not want to work? As soon as they get work, they walk out of it. If all the expats should decide to leave the Cayman Islands, how many Caymanians would want to take up the jobs the expats leave, and how would business go on? Shaking my head. So let's address this. Luigi, you're a young Caymanian. I'm sure you've heard this probably more times than you can count. The amount of times I've heard this, Caymanians are all lazy and they don't want to work. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I probably wouldn't have to work. I'd be a millionaire. But it is, and I get it, because I'm a small business owner. So I understand that you have those few bad apples. And to be honest, they are attracted to certain industries where they have that kind of lazy streak, and they come in and they're not always going to show up on time. And, someone said to me the other day, every opportunity certain Caymanian staff get, they take a long extended weekend. So here comes the weekend. You can better believe on Monday they're going to be sick, or on Friday they're going to be calling in sick. What's your take on this, Luigi?
I understand where that comes into the conversation. In my experience, I've had to deal with that from people who were, who have had work experience for the last 20 years and worked at fine hotels, and there's no excuse in regards to that. It comes down to, guys, I need to take this a step back, where fundamentally this comes down to the narrative that we've been fed and has been established for the last 20 years, that Caymanians shouldn't be in the hospitality industry for one reason or another. The false narrative is because we're lazy, because we don't want to work, because we're too good for that. Mm-hmm. It is, in my opinion, also, been intentional to kind of blind people to the amazing benefits and opportunities that are available in the hospitality tourism industry. And not part of that is just because you're in that industry doesn't give you the right to think that you should be an entrepreneur or you need to, be the boss or you need to be the manager. There's levels to this thing, and you have to have a level of humbleness and appreciation for the opportunity for employment, regardless of what that level is, especially if you don't have a job coming into it. I've been fortunate to have some amazing, so proud of the last 9 years, amazing, talented young Caymanians that have come through our business that have moved on with my encouragement for sure to other countries, other industries, other businesses in the tourism sector, and they're now doing well. Some of them are doing their own business. Some of them are in management, and based on our resume, it had not a bit of experience, but we've given them the opportunity. I'm concerned. My only requirement as far as qualification to come and work at Cayman Cabana in this tourism industry is a willingness to work and a positive attitude to be able to push through. And that's my qualification requirements to be able to come and work here, whether you came in or not. My preference is obviously, and I get inspired, I get excited when I do meet a young Caymanian that wants to work in this industry. And whether this is the right place for them or not, I still encourage them to go and pursue that. I've had some amazing talented chefs and cooks and busters, people who, from the bottom up, now, it's encouraging to see, and I don't like the narrative of Caymanians don't want to work or not good for this industry, you're too lazy, because I've seen otherwise. I've been fortunate to speak at the hospitality school a few years ago, and I told those kids, you have no idea how much of a blessing it is to have the opportunity right now. This is about 5 years ago, to have this program and this opportunity at UCCI to prepare yourself for the benefits of what's available in the tourism industry here in Cayman. And I'm not sure exactly how that's going at the program over there, but I can tell you that there's a lot of kids who are interested and would like to, but there's a narrative in the back of their mind, in the back of their ear, whispering to them that it's too good for this, you shouldn't be doing this, unless you're in management. It doesn't work like that. And it bothers me because and at the other end of it, when you are a Caymanian in this industry and you are an owner, manager, or anywhere, I can tell you from my perspective, it's almost as if I'm a minority in my own tourism hospitality industry. I can tell you from my perspective, that's a fact. When I was selling t-shirts on the side of the road, nobody had a problem with that. I was doing my little thing hustling. Get into the restaurant industry, 9 years later, people still don't expect me to still be here. I'm one of 3 solely owned Caymanian owners, managers, operators. I clean the bathrooms if I need to, that work in this industry. And at the same time, the laws, the policies, the regulations, the criteria are decided and made by Caymanians on the boards, in the government, in associations, however you look. So we can't blame other people who with a side eye take advantage of the missed opportunities that we don't take for ourselves, and they take advantage of it and they grow. And 20 years ago, half of the guys who own restaurants in Caymanians right now are the face of the industry. We're the same people busting tables and waiting tables 20, 15 years ago. They own the restaurants right now. They own the water sports. They own the hotels. They're the managers. But on the other side of that, I have an issue with people like Laurent, Troy, and myself, and countless other people who are in this industry, who pursue it and want to succeed and want to be a part of this industry, are treated and disrespected because we're Caymanian. I can do anything else. I can take people not expecting me to still be here. But one thing I'm not going to tolerate is being disrespected because I'm Caymanian with the narrative of, well, we're not supposed to, we're lazy or we don't work hard. Right? I'm telling you otherwise. It's different. I've seen it for myself. There's amazing, talented people in this industry from Cayman that are putting in work behind the scenes that need to be commended and acknowledged. So it comes back to going back 20 years ago where we messed up and telling our kids and telling people that there's better opportunities. What is a better opportunity to try and get a job if you're not even employed? Do something. Go throw anchor out in a boat. Go clean the boat. Go clean the dishwashers. Do something. You don't have to be a manager in order to be successful in this industry. Go pump gas. Go. I don't see no faces, no Caymanians at the drive-through of any of these fast food restaurants either. Do something to prepare yourself to be in the hospitality industry, in a service-based industry. That'll make you appreciate and learn values. Go buy groceries. That'll make you appreciate earning an honest dollar, work ethic, and appreciation for your community and what we have here. Our Department of Tourism, our Ministry of Tourism, for the last several ministries and departments have been led by amazing Caymanians who have done a fantastic job in attracting people to our shores. And you'll be surprised, I'm surprised, the amount of people that when I go to a table, they look at me like they can't believe they just seen a blue iguana, because they haven't seen in the last 10 days that they've been here. And guess what? They've had just the best experience. I've had people come and tell me that, I'm so glad I came here, I had the best experience. Not only did I meet you in this Caymanian hospitality, but unfortunately, at some of the hotels in concierge, they told me not to come to Cayman Cabana because it's too local, right? This is the mentality that we permit and allow to happen throughout this industry, including in the associations. A lot of these companies, a lot of these hotels, a lot of these restaurants, all these associations, whatever, they do this highfalutin mentality where they go to graduations and they give out gift certificates and encourage people to work in the hospitality industry. But those same people will never hire the Caymanians because they're just doing it for PR points. They're just doing it for a public relations point. But their intention is not to do that. And I know
Luigi,
I'm sorry.
can I say this?
But I know. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you there, right? But Sandra, Luigi is a Caymanian, I think, an iconic person in respect to what is seen to be Caymanian. He is a restaurant owner, an employer. I hope you guys digested what Luigi Moxham just said, because there's so much more to read into what he just said. And this is why, Troy, when I'm saying to you, Caymans, this PAC administration has to put Caymanians first, is because of people like Luigi who are trying to make it in the industry, who are Caymanian, have that struggle. Now you understand why the PAC is taking the approach that it's taken, not because we expect you to take the burden, but because we have to put Caymanians first. Just wanted to interrupt. Sorry about that, Luigi.
No, you are 100% right, Kenneth, and I'm looking forward to working with this government to try and change that narrative, and examples like Troy and perfect examples like Laurent. I just get frustrated by the narrative of we're not supposed to be in this industry, or because we don't work hard, we're lazy. I can tell you, I've seen many hard-working Caymanians in this industry that you never see. That they're not the face of the industry, and that's also part of the problem.
Yeah,
you don't see them. You don't see them at the tables waiting. You don't see them as bartenders. You don't see them as managers. You don't see them in the kitchen. You don't see them at the drive-through face. You don't get that Cayman kind on hospitality face to face. So
yeah,
our kids do not have the example in representation. Not because people don't want to hire them. It's because people are put themselves in a position to be a part of the industry, and you can't expect the government or nobody to save you or to help you if you don't want to help yourself. You know what I mean? I give it a simple analogy. Look at guys like this is, my Laker friend, Kenneth there. If you on a team, right? Just because we grew up together and you won't be on my basketball team, my championship team, don't mean that I need to pick you or have you on my team if you're not also putting in the work and going to practice and earning your stripes to be able to contribute something to the game and to the team. I don't care who your mom is, who your daddy is. You will have to bring something to the table. I'm gonna pick you so you can be on the team, but you can't come in there expecting that you want to be in a starting five or you want to be captain. You have to put in the work and the sacrifice, and it's okay to not know what that is like and where that's going to go. But at the same time, I would like to emphasize that the people who are in this industry, the Caymanians who are in this industry, the people who are working hard, the people who are sacrificing and going through the ranks like Mr. Bodner, we have to be protected. We don't necessarily got to be protected, but we have to make sure we're respected. and you have to earn that, and you do that by doing your job and working and coming through the ranks, putting yourself on on the front line. So, our kids don't have a face or an example of Caymanian representation in the tourism industry to the extent of what they perceive as tourism and hospitality industry. Tourism and hospitality industry isn't just the front line. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that are putting in work and trying to be a part of the industry. And guess what? They get discouraged. They get it's so hard already. And then when you do become a part of that industry, you get discouraged by the crab kind of mentality by the own people. I'm gonna say it like how it is. It's a fact. The people who are in this industry, I'm giving an example. I don't care. I'm saying it like this. I'll give you an example. Casanova's next door. 10 years I've been fighting to have the same opportunity music and dance license as Casanova's. Do you know that I'm the only Caymanian only business restaurant in the entire Georgetown waterfront that's had a restriction on my music and dance license? Not Margaritaville, not Hard Rock, not Casanova's, not Rackham's, not Sandbar. I'm the only one. And that's because they think that the concept, other than the Caymanian concept, is more valuable. We have to stop disenfranchising each other, and we have to stop devaluing the Caymanian contribution to the tourism industry. And at the same time, the Caymanians have to understand that there is value in working hard and sacrificing from the bottom up, coming through the ranks to earn an opportunity in this industry, whether it's management or otherwise. That's the bottom line.
So Luigi is just basically put the both sides of it, that the Caymanians that are in the industry, whether as an employee or whether as an entrepreneur, they need to be encouraged, supported, etc., because they are becoming the face or need to become the face of the tourism industry, right? But at the same time, the flip side of it is that the Caymanians that want to be in this industry need to, number one, have a passion for this industry. Number two, need to recognize that it's not a 9-to-5 job, right? That when other people want to play and have leisure, that they are working. And that's a big issue. Caymanians also want to work 9-to-5 Fridays, and you want to be in the restaurant industry, in the water sports industry. Sunday is your business day. Sunday is your busiest day. So these are important things. But I think that it is important. It is absolutely important for Caymanians to be in the front line of tourism, right? That's an important national objective.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what we're all speaking to. How you affect that now is really important, right? And I think that's the thing, is that it's a complex subject. First of all, we need to communicate to the Caymanian society that being in the service industry is a noble career, right? Because so many of us believe that being a server or being in service is somehow beneath us, right?
Right.
What we also got to remember is that we market Cayman as a premium destination, right? We have some of the best restaurants in the world. We have some of the best hotels in the world, water sports operators. We are not a 3-star destination. We're a 5-star destination. It is impossible to...
Well, we're certainly charging 5-star prices.
Yeah, no, but I tell you, I've traveled all over the world, and I can tell you something. That Cayman offers a premium product.
Yeah,
we are probably one of the culinary capitals of the world. When you look at per capita, the number of restaurants here and the quality of food, the consistency. And the quality
of food,
Absolutely. So you cannot expect then businesses, whether they're Caymanian or non-Caymanian or new Caymanian owned or whatever, to say you need to go and take staff that are not able to rise to that level of service just because they're Caymanian, right? So you can't do that. We have to raise our game. And one of the important things, not only in the tourism industry, that we need to recognize is that the people who leave their countries to come here for opportunity, they are not the average person from the country from whence they've come, okay? Just their proactivity, risk-taking, ambition to go 2,000 or 3,000 miles across the world for opportunity automatically means that, you know, they're a step up. If we're going to take our Caymanian people and offer them the competition from around the world unbridled, we need to make sure that they are educated and trained, but we also got to make sure that they understand that punctuality, reliability, discipline, ambition, those are things that are needed. Because when a boat captain or a deck mate or a server comes 5 minutes late, that could actually affect my entire business. The hospitality and tourism business is one of the few businesses in the world that is constantly under review. If a diner has a bad experience, within 5 minutes after they finish, that's on TripAdvisor, right? If they have a great experience, 5 minutes later, that's on TripAdvisor. So we need to recognize, so we can't take the risk. We cannot take the risk of having employees who are not very good at their jobs. And in terms of the opportunity, I just want to say, right, there is a myth that you cannot make money in this industry. That is absolutely ridiculous. If you are good and you're passionate about what you do, you can make good money. We at our restaurant,
let's talk about that.
Right. We had gratuities are a big part of your earnings. We have had, or I think the maximum gratuity that we actually had at our restaurant was $1,000. Now we're a modest cafe, right? We're not high fine dining. $1,000 tip.
That's a day's worth of gratuity?
Tip. Yeah. No. That was one customer gave one of our servers a $1,000 tip. I've had a 3-hour charter. Our record for gratuities on a charter was a 3-hour charter. That the gentleman paid $600 for the charter.
Troy, that is part of it.
He went out and he went out on the charter.
Let me
Can I add to that? Because I've been a little bit quiet listening to everyone.
Yes, and we do have Eaton as well who wants to join the conversation. But Laurent, please, what's your take on that?
Trust me, you can make very good money, and there's so many misconceptions in this tourism industry. I, as a server, I've made $1,000 multiple times working as a server at Grand Oak House and at the Wharf. It's money to be made, and this is the message that I want to get across to young Caymanians coming up, because there is listen, if someone's giving $1,000, you must step up. You must have done something to have earned that $1,000. People just don't give away money just for the sake of giving it. So I'm not saying, like, I want more of my people in this industry, and I don't want that to be misinterpreted by the message said before. But we need to be putting in the effort, and we need to show that we want something for ourselves. And this is basic. And to add to what Troy was saying regarding, like, what got us to this point where we're in such a good standing of tourism, and our old timers, what got us here was the old seamen. They traveled the world and they saw the world, and they brought the ideas back to Cayman. We have this opportunity without leaving Cayman. Now we have people from all over the world that we can travel just by having a conversation with someone. The opportunity we have with that. Trust me, this has brought me so far in my career, and I want to encourage young Caymanians to take advantage of this. We want you guys there. It's much more better to have you. I, as a Caymanian, I would much prefer to have you there. So I don't want that to be misinterpreted.
Well, Sandra, I'm going to run and leave you guys. I'm already late for my 9 o'clock meeting, but I want to say this, right? The thing I'm happy about this morning is this is a Caymanian-driven talk show, and this is time. And I say that because now we're starting to see, we analyze that, look closer at the fact that there's more money in it, the fact that we need training, the qualifications and attitude that you need, the commitment that you need. You hear from Troy, you hear about the issues that Caymanians do face in the industry. You're hearing all of those conversations today. But I want to leave you by saying this, that what the park administration is committed to do is situations like what Luigi is dealing with, that he's protected as a Caymanian in the industry. things like what Troy has said about making sure the Caymanians are prepared to do the job and not fail and make us look bad so people can say Caymanians don't want to work. And like things like what the other, I forgot his name. What is his name again, buddy?
Lawrence.
Oh yeah, you guys know this. Like what he said, that there is money to be made, and there's let's change this perception that there's not money here. So we're covering a lot of ground this morning, and I'm really happy about that because I know this program will go amongst what you call our grassroots Caymanians and try to get them into industry. One of the things I'll leave you with, which is a delicate and difficult thing to do, is manage our perception. And what I mean by that is, we're here talking about Caymanians, and it reminded me of the picture that I saw that I knew was circulating, and Sandra, you know about this, was the picture that was put in the paper of the restaurant industry. And so many people said there were a bunch of men in that picture, and nobody could identify Caymanian there. Luigi wasn't in that picture as a part of the restaurant association, right? And so all of us know Luigi, we're a small knit community. But the reality is the development of our society over time, we don't even know who we are anymore. Because there's a lot of people in that picture who were Caymanian.
Yes.
And this is another struggle that complicates the matter even more, is that you can't tell who a Caymanian is from the look, and neither can we divide each other, because we have to see each other as new Caymanian and old Caymanian as one, because I don't know how we're going to progress moving forward. But there is a divide, though. I must say that maybe of the newer Caymanians, they're not seeing like what you call a generational Caymanians as a part of the solution. So why is it that Luigi, what would you call a generational Caymanian, not in that picture, not in the not in the roots of the CITA organization? Why do we not see more grassroots? So what the problem that is being analyzed here, and I'm sorry to highlight the reality, but this is what is happening, where Caymanians are feeling like they're not a part of the industry bigger picture. But we can't say Caymanians are not involved, because, like, say for instance, many of the people who are CETA, that I had to say to myself, well, who are these people? But when I recognized that over 90% of them were Caymanian, but we just don't know each other anymore. And this has to go with our lack of understanding and the major division between grassroots and new Caymanians, because we got two different worlds. So bigger problem. I'm sorry to leave that crazy analysis to go through for you, but that's how complicated this is. And the only way for us to try to give some solution to it is, listen, don't care what kind of Caymanian it is, but it's going to be Caymanian first, because that's the only other solution. We don't have time to analyze the socioeconomic factors that are involved in here. What we know as a government, as PAC administration, is that we're committed to Caymanians first.
Yes.
Anyway, I love you guys.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, 1 second. I also recognize that, you know, with all the rhetoric in the conversation that's going on throughout the industry, with CETA and otherwise, and the lack of representation, and it is frustrating and it can be very discouraging. So I can only imagine people who don't know any better, is that at the end of the day, and my recommitment to that is to try and make sure I do my part and encourage other people. At the end of the day, in order for you to be a part of the solution, you have to participate.
Exactly.
And you have to get involved. And so I'm going to do my part on instead of I'm going to do my part and try and participate a little bit more in the government's initiatives and CETA's initiatives, and collectively what we're going to do to try and improve this
absolutely
situation. So that being said, and we're starting our 1-5 hospitality group, which is going to commit to training Caymanians throughout the summer, going into the school year next year, on putting it on the table and say, you know, and learn. So I just want to say, at the end of the day, you got to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Minister. We know you got to go. You just got a phone call saying you're 2 minutes late.
Remember, Cayman first. All right, love you guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks very much. So listen, folks, we still have a good almost 400 people tuned into the conversation this morning. We're going to go a little bit into overtime. here on this program, we're not so concerned about the time. If the conversation is good and people are still engaged, we will continue to have it. So let me just put this one thing on the table. First of all, let me bring Troy back in. We do have Eden Hurlston, who's also joining us. Good morning, Eden. I also want to say this, food for thought for people to consider and people to think about, right? As someone who has had the opportunity to live in another man's country for 15 years, come back to my own country, there's certain things that I have witnessed that I've seen
Is this whole off, or is
that I think,
She's talking.
oh, sorry, I think I'm going to mute you for a second there, Eden. I think Eden can't hear me for some reason. But yes, there are certain things that I've seen, there are prejudice that I've seen on both sides of the table. But going back to this fundamental idea, and that person later posted another comment saying that, yes, they're Caymanians. They are a Caymanian, and they still are propagating this idea that Caymanians are lazy and Caymanians don't want to work. As a Caymanian, I cannot, in good faith, put that narrative out there. Because I'm just going to pull you out of the stream there, Aiden. He's having some audio issues. I can't put that narrative out there. What I can say is we have a small percentage, because again, the Cayman Islands isn't that big, and when you consider who's actually a Caymanian, it's not that many people. We do have a percentage of individuals who don't have the drive, they don't have the desire, they don't have that fire in their belly. But equally, there are tons of Caymanians, which you see on this screen here today, that have that desire, that want to work, that will get up at the crack of dawn and do what they need to do in order to be able to support their families, to get a mortgage, to pay the bills, et cetera, et cetera. So I want people to think about one thing. Whenever you go to somebody else's country to work, right? Your sole purpose of going there is to work. So you might work and play, but that's it. You don't have any family obligations. If you get one day off a week, you don't have to be taking care of granny. You don't have to go to church. If you don't want to do that, you can, hang out at the beach. You can drink with your friends. You can do whatever. So when people try to compare, it's not an equal comparison to say, oh, people come to your country and they're willing to work. Well, why else are they coming here? I mean, we've seen a few trying a little, immigration stint, but the whole purpose of you coming here should be, if you're on a work permit, should be to find employment and to work. It shouldn't be to lounge around and be lazy and hang out at the NAU office, which you're not necessarily eligible for. So the perception and what you actually see is the Caymanians are highlighted a bit more for being lazy, not wanting to work, because this is the Cayman Islands. If I go to the United States of America right now, they're having an issue getting people back to work after they've been, on their version of a stipend. I saw a restaurant owner the other day said he had 60 positions open, 60, and he can't get anybody to apply in big old America, right? Where unemployment is into the millions. He's like, where are these people? Why are they not applying for jobs? Because they've gotten kind of used to stipend life. And now the government has changed the unemployment requirements, where before they're going to give you that unemployment check, you need to prove that you've been actively at least applying for jobs and going out there and searching. So this concept of laziness isn't unique to Caymanians. It's not an issue of Caymanians being particularly lazy and not wanting to work. This is something that you find all over the world. If you go to the Philippines, you will find Filipinos who are lazy and who don't want to work and who want to rely on their social services. Although the Filipino president's a little bit crazy. He'll kill you if you're not wanting to. Like, you might not get away with it too easily there, because trust me, did you guys hear what he's doing with the whole COVID thing? Like, he's going to force people to get the COVID jab, or he's going to throw you in jail or something crazy. The dude is a little bit crazy. So I don't know how much unemployment they have there, but I'm sure that they have their unemployment just like everywhere else in the world, right? We have a small population. So you hear these, you have these experiences, and you hear these experiences perhaps with a different degree of frequency because of the size of our population. But the average Caymanian, listen, like I said, I was up until 1 o'clock this morning on my little hustle, working one of my 2 businesses. You know what I'm saying? And that is what we have to do. And it is what it is. Then you get back up at 5:30 and you're going through the whole cycle again. The other thing I want to quickly comment on, this concept that you can't make money. So I know that Lorette has spoken to it. Troy has spoken to it. The fact that you can make really good money with tips. I was actually speaking to someone from CETA the other day, and they were talking about what you need to do. And this comes down to money management skills. And again, a bit of a lost opportunity, because I think all of these people who were working in tourism, who have been getting the stipend, they could have been afforded the opportunity to go to, listen, you're in tourism. Here is how you qualify for a mortgage. This is what the bank is going to be looking for. These are the steps that you need to take. Go through a training course on how to make that dollar stretch a little bit more, even in Cayman's economy. But one of the things that she said to me that was really, really interesting with the feedback that they've gotten from the banks is you have got to be prepared to make sure that your gratuities and your tips are lodged in your bank account, so that you can then create a history to say, listen, yes, I only make $4.50 an hour, but every single day for the past 2 years, I've been able to put in $1,000 a week, and this is what I get with my base salary plus my gratuities. And that consistency in that position will show them, and they've got a record of it, what you're able to make and what bills you're actually able to pay. So there is a way, even in the tourism industry, folks, to qualify for mortgages. Yes, it becomes a little bit more challenging, but it's the same thing with small business owners. Do you know how many small business owners, cash driven, take the cash, stuff it in their pockets, and go spend it? And then the bank doesn't have a record of that cash ever hitting the bank account. So they can claim that they make all the money in the world. And if the bank doesn't see the paper trail, they're going to go, we don't see how that's possible. So you've got to be smarter.
Sandy, let me tell you something. That is about 75% accurate, because the reality is that when you do go talk to the banks, including my employees who have attempted to open accounts or otherwise, unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't understand it, the banks don't recognize that as your genuine income. They don't accept the gratuities as part of your income. You may earn a $1,200 check, in check for the month, but you probably made $4,000 or $5,000 in gratuities for the month. You can put money in there, but you saying that this is part of the money that I work and I earn as gratuity, they don't accept it. They don't acknowledge it. As a business owner, it is, I've been told in my face, is the fact that in this industry, it is not recognized as it's recognized as high risk. Musicians, artists, crafts, the people who do the small things and small businesses in the creative industry, in the hospitality industry, entrepreneurs are not valued as legitimate businesses by the banks. They don't accept these as career options, and that's part of the downfall in the narrative collectively for everybody as to why people are even encouraged to be in this industry. That's a fact. Even in his best musicians in the Caymanians, he can make $10,000 a month, and unless if that's all from tips, they still not acknowledge that is part of his genuine income as a musician. Because as a crowd, you can be selling Caymanite all you want, you can be making a Caymanite. They're not going to give you a loan to get the machine and the studio to be an artist or to go and make Caymanite. They're not going to give you the loan to go and develop the thatch industry here. You're not going to give you a loan to open up a pop-up restaurant without you having significant amount of collateral and investors. So it's looked at as high risk. And that's part of the discouraging narrative of that. They're looking at you as a bartender, server, a dishwasher. You may make $2,500 a month, the same as a bank teller, but they're
looks like we've dropped him. Let me just read a few comments, Luigi. I think you dropped out a little bit. Troy, I think you're having some internet issues as well. But we do have a few comments. One that came in via WhatsApp says, I don't want to post on Facebook for everyone to see my name. I was a born Caymanian and I've worked in tourism for over 16 years, basically since I left school. Yes, we don't get to wear makeup and high heels to work, and that shouldn't be a deterrent, but seeing that smile on a customer's face after helping pure happiness. The most heartwarming for me is when children visiting here, when children have never seen the beach, and in their life, I think is what that was supposed to be. And to come and visit our clean, sandy 7 Mile Beach is priceless. We often take for granted what we have, but I believe it has to start from the schools. They need to bring back our culture in the system. Unfortunately, I'm one of those Caymanians that work and love tourism, but cannot get a loan to buy a house, as same point we're just addressing, as the bank does not accept commissions. Keep in mind, I pay rent, send children to school, and I have other bills that I have from my salary. The past 15 months have been hard because I saved my money. I was able to provide for my family without the assistance of NAU. Bring back tourism. These employers need to stop saying that Caymanians are lazy. We are not, but in fact, being bullied to believe we are lazy. And then in reference to the bank situation, they said, that's not true, Sandy. When my employer does my transfer for commission, it says in the description, commission for this month. And that has been linked for over 5 years with her. And I still got denied. Banks don't acknowledge commission and tips, no matter how the employer writes it up. So it seems to me that we need to be having a conversation, and this now is where the finance minister needs to be talking to the tourism minister, and we need to maybe have a conversation with some of these banks. So Erilyn says, Sandra, what about the older Caymanians that don't have the computer skills that most hotels are now requiring, that they never required before COVID, in housekeeping, laundry department? How will they regain employment? What computer skills do you need to fold a bed or make a bed? What's going on here?
But I guarantee you that they think that folding a bed and working in housekeeping in a hotel is beneath them. And I promise you, they make good money, really good money.
So I don't know specifically what computer skills all of a sudden COVID would have created. But what I can say, again, just like everything else, sometimes you have to upskill yourself, and you have to be willing to, to learn. I mean, I've been in the training and professional development space for a really long time, and we have had young people, old people. You're never too old to learn as long as you're willing. And it just takes practice. Listen, I worked at Maples and Calder, right? I was a student there and working full time at the same time as a paralegal, or whatever my job title was at the time, legal secretary. And I remember quite distinctly when I returned to Cayman, Maples actually had an older system that they didn't even have Windows. They had WordPerfect or whatever it's called, which I had never seen in my life. And I'm thinking, you guys are supposed to be some big time financial services center, but yet you're using outdated technology. Well, within about a year or so of me being there, they upgraded their computer system, right? I'll never forget. There was a Canadian lady, again, paralegal, being paid more than the Caymanian. You know how it goes, more well-respected because, she comes with this wealth of experience from Canada. When Maple switched to the Windows interface, she worked in litigation, and I legit remember her. I will never forget this. Sitting there crying. I mean, like tears, like somebody had died kind of tears, about how she's never going to be able to understand this system. She's not going to learn it. This is so much stress for her. Just all this stuff. And I was like, what? I said, girl, in 3 months, you're going to forget this moment. You're going to be a pro on this. Just pull yourself together. It wasn't, to me, it was interesting to see her reaction. I think it was a little bit of an age and generational thing, where in that moment, she felt extremely stressed out about having to learn a whole new system in order to keep her job and to be able to do her job. And I'm sure we've all had those moments where we think, oh my God, I cannot do this. I cannot learn this, but you can. And sure enough, she did. And, sometime later, I remember saying to her, hey, do you remember when? And she kind of chuckled about it. Because, these moments pass. So, Erlyn, I don't know specifically what those computer systems are, but I think if hotels are implementing, new fandangle systems that they expect housekeepers to be able to utilize, they also have to be fair to those individuals and provide them with training. And this is what I want to say to the Caymanians who perhaps are listening to this program. You might be an older Caymanian. You're thinking to yourself, well, I don't know how to use a computer, none at all. there are tons of options available to you for training. You can go online and practically learn these things for free. I am a huge YouTuber because YouTube has everything in the world for me to learn, from a new recipe to how to do something with my camera equipment, how to, you just have to be willing to do it. You can hit the pause button and rewind it as many times as you want. And no one is going to think you're stupid because YouTube doesn't know what you're doing, how many times you've watched a video. It doesn't matter. You can just take your time and you can learn a new skill. You don't have the money to take a course right now. That's understandable. The truth of the matter is you don't need money to be able to learn a new skill or to learn something new. You just need the desire and the willingness. And I hope that if these hotels have introduced, new software, that they're also giving Caymanians the opportunity to learn on those systems as well. So, Eden, I know that I was just about to bring him in, and then he's got that buffering circle going on there. But Laurent, what have been, in your experience, while we're waiting on Eden to come back in, what has been, Eden actually said it's called Gremlins, and they're talking about the machines. Many have touchscreen interfaces, etc. Well, that shouldn't be that difficult. I think it's just a matter of, learning. I don't know what they do, but learning, if you got to say, okay, I'm going into room 204. I've started at this time. I've finished at this time. Maybe they're having like a little checklist. I don't know exactly what the computer system's all about. But again, I would hope that these hotels are being fair to everyone and giving them the opportunity to learn. So Laurent, in your own experiences, what would you say are the top qualities of, a Caymanian or any individual really who wants to work in the restaurant business? What sort of attitude do you have to come in with, right? Say you're talking to a young Caymanian, 15, 16 years old, who's watching this program and who's listening to this. What salient advice would you give them to say, hey, these are the traits that you want coming into this industry? This is the attitude that you've got to have. What advice would you give?
For young Caymanians coming in this industry, I would say you gotta be passionate. You gotta be passionate. You gotta love what you do. You gotta be dedicated. You gotta be punctual, and you gotta be willing to learn, because this is an ongoing industry. There's so much to learn. Don't think when you work in the restaurant business or any hospitality industry that you just know about the hospitality industry. You have to know about other industries. You have to be willing to continue to learn and continue to expand your mind. So it's just people skills as important as it's emphasized in this world today. People skills is super important, and you learn that on the job. So, yeah, willingness to learn, passion, dedication, punctuality, and I think with those traits, you'll go very far.
There's a level of perseverance too. I'd like to add to that exactly what you said, but there's a level of perseverance that you have to have. It's not going to be good days every day. Trust me. So if you in your feelings about having to work on a Sunday or a holiday or too busy, this and that, or for 14 hours, enough for you.
Yeah.
Another part of the industry, Mike, if you in your feelings about having to work on a Sunday or a holiday or too busy, this and that, or for 14 hours, enough for you.
Yeah.
It's true. Like for an example, like on Christmas Day, I haven't spent Christmas with my family for the 6 years. Well, last year was the only year because of COVID, obviously. But for 6 years, I didn't work. I didn't spend Christmas Day at all with my family. So it requires you to adapt to situations and learn to make the most of the situations that you get. I work, like when you work Christmas brunch at Grand Ole House, some of you have maybe been to it, you work from 7 in the morning till possibly 1 at night. So everyone else is enjoying. Yeah, you love to be there with the people, but obviously there's places that you'd rather be. Of course, I want to be with my family, but this is the job. This is a sacrifice I've made to get where I am. So, yeah, you have to have a long-term vision. You have to know what you want. If you don't have a vision working in this industry, the little things will upset you, and the little things will deter you from the industry. because there are always going to be things. It's hard to keep people happy. Think about it. In this industry, you're managing people. You're not just managing yourself. You're managing the people around you that you're working with. So everyone has bad days, and it's not easy to manage people on the bad days. So
Elizabeth had a question about condo management. Elizabeth, we're definitely going to have this conversation with the accommodation sector, and perhaps we can get people in the condos to tell us what's available in terms of training. Bonnie responded to Francis saying that you're wrong about Caymanians walking off of jobs. I have seen Caymanians harassed to the limit because an expat wanted to bring their own nationality to fill the post. Please, Christy 86, that statement. I don't know what Christy 86 means, but Eden, good morning and thank you.
86 just means it's not available.
Oh, okay.
Just remove it.
86, yeah. Throw it away.
Yeah, discard it. Okay, I got you. So Eden, are you with us? I think your internet. I don't know what's going on internet wise this morning, but
something is internet is weird today.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit spotty. We keep getting that that buffering screen.
But Sandy, to that comment that you just read out about Caymanians and on the job and leaving the job, and
I just wanted to add to what Laurent and industry isn't.
Ooh, am I
for everybody?
Sandy,
okay,
can you hear me?
Like,
yes.
I've seen bartender and they weren't at the bar, right? You're at 10 p.m. and party comes in and it's a chance to make hours. So them getting 15% of the people who applied for that paid training at the level.
Is it me or is
it? I'm gonna pull you out there, Eden. You definitely got some internet and freezing issues today.
Yeah, Sandy, the point I wanted to make, right, is that the first thing that we must not do is we must not generalize. There are good and bad employers, and there are good and bad employees.
Yes.
And it is really important that we have the systems and the structure in place that if a Caymanian feels that they are being harassed, that they're not being paid properly, that they're not receiving their gratuities, that they're not receiving equal access to all the opportunities within a business that they're working, that they have a legitimate and effective way to address those through labor tribunal, labor board, whatever, right? So that's the first thing. We have to have that in place so that we get rid of this I don't know, whatever suppression, let's say, of Caymanian talent, opportunity, ambition, etc. So that we must have that. We must have it. We have to focus on that, and we must have it. And then the second thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we communicate the opportunities that are in the industry, but we also recruit, train, and retain people who have a passion for this job. In fact, that's the wrong word. Service is actually not a job. It's a profession. It's a career. It takes a special person with a special passion to, on Christmas Day, as Laurent said, or Sunday when the rest of their family is out enjoying things, for them to take the time, focus, and attention to make an exceptional experience for their diner or their boat guest or whatever. Not everybody is cut out for this. And just because you're unemployed, I heard somebody say to me, oh, well, it's just waiting tables, right? Yeah, just waiting tables. I mean, come on, give me a break. It's attitude, it's focus, it's dedication. A good server can go to a table with 6 people, spiel out all the specials for the day, answer questions about ingredients in a dish, take the order and walk away without a mistake and without writing anything down on paper, right? That's talent. It takes talent to make people's experiences exceptional in a 5-star destination. So we must not sit down and just go, oh, well, anybody can wait tables, because that is absolutely not the case. So we have to come at this from both sides of the equation. We have to make sure that companies are doing their job, what they have to do for Caymanians, and then we need to make sure that Caymanians are doing what they need to do for their own opportunities and the employers for whom they work. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, good point. Because I tell you what, I couldn't bus tables. I'm just not cut out for that. And I think you know your limitations too, right? So it isn't for everyone. I think if like Laurent, and you have said Troy and Luigi, if you have the passion for it, then that's certainly a start. But I think you also have to know what your limitations are when you're a young person. You need to speak to counselors, you need to speak to industry workers to kind of figure out what you're going to be best at in life. And sometimes you don't know, and sometimes that changes. So, as a young person, you might start out in the tourism industry. You might start out doing that. And eventually you find you want to do something else.
Can I add something to that, Miss Sandra?
Sure.
When I started in this industry, I didn't know of the Troys and the Luigis in this industry that have worked in the industry for so long. So when I got into this industry, I wanted to make a difference to that narrative of Caymanians being lazy, because I don't agree with it. I wanted to make sure that my employer saw that I was a Caymanian, a motivated Caymanian that wanted to do something great, and I wanted to contribute to his business. Thankfully, I chose right from the beginning. I got great mentorship from the ownership, management to the support staff and all, and it has led me to a good place. So I just want to just to shed light that there are many Caymanians that have come through our area and have done well. They have done well. It's just the industry doesn't. Sometimes you want to stick in it, and there's sacrifices you have to make to stay in it. So I just wanted that. And if you want to, we can train you too, Miss Sandra, if you want to be a waiter. So just a heads up. We're offering the training if you want to apply.
Well, you know what, Lorraine, I'm going to tell you something. One of the segments that I definitely want to do on the show is called a Day in the Life of. And I think to show people an appreciation for everyone in the jobs that they do, whether it's the garbage collector or the cash register in the grocery store, the store clerks, a restaurant, a bus boy, whatever. I actually want to follow people around for like a day in their jobs and then capture that and share that with our viewers, because I think so many of us do not have an appreciation for what people do and how incredibly hard people work. So that's an initiative that we're hoping to kick off here shortly. So perhaps we can partner with you guys, Luigi, Troy, and Laurent, in highlighting some of the people in the restaurant business, in tourism, so that people can kind of see, what it is that they actually do. So I'll do it for a day. I can't promise a commitment beyond that. So I'm going to tell you up front that it will be just for that day. But hey, you know what you're getting, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I think there's so much more to it. And one of the questions I have, is there any sort of mentorship program that involves the tourism industry, that involves, I don't know if CETA has ever done this, but why don't we have people like Luigi going into the schools, organized program where he's talking to young people about what it is to be a restaurant manager owner and what are some of the things that he is looking for in his employees. Troy, Laurent was saying he didn't even know you guys existed. Yeah. I think that would have been awesome to have known that you had mentors in the industry.
Yeah, I tell you, I wish I knew that Laurent existed, and I wish I could find him available. Yeah. But I gotta run. But I just wanted to say, I'm actually just in the process of doing the 1245 hospitality group. And I'm gonna reach out to Troy and several other people. I would love to connect with the group over at Granite House and the Wharf, and several other people across the industry, and educate people on the reality of understanding that hospitality isn't limited to just working and washing dishes and serving tables. There's a lot of different ways that you can gain valuable life skills, whether that's your career or not, in the hospitality industry. You have to be willing and you have to be humble to be able to put yourself in that position. And you can't be naive to the reality of the sacrifice and the hard work that it takes and the commitment for that. I've had amazing people, and still do, people that have been with me for 9 years amazing staff, and we've seen a lot of young Caymanians come through and been very successful and continue to be very successful. So I am not going to get involved in a conversation about Caymanians being lazy and not interested in this industry. We do have to be in the conversation and understanding that there is value to being in this industry as an employee, as an employer, and but at the end of the day, the criteria has to be set and protecting the Caymanians in the industry. To be the face of the to be a face of the industry, you have to participate and the businesses, the financial industry, sorry, the banking industry has to also value the tourism, hospitality entrepreneur as well. They don't. They don't. It's discouraging for us to continue to even keep our business if we're fortunate enough to still survive this pandemic. To be doing, they still don't value that. So it's discouraging for someone that may look up to want to be a like me or Troy or Laurent, but then they're discouraged. Like, well, they getting beat down all the time. Why am I going to even bother? It's all part of the conversation, you know. So it's like, for example, look at Eden's band. You can't say there is a local band because every single person in the band that plays the instrument is Caymanian. If you're not the right drummer or the pianist, you can't be part of the band. You have to go and practice and hone your skills and train and practice if you want to be part of the band. You can't just expect to show up just because you're Caymanian to do so. You'll be given the opportunity, but that doesn't mean you're guaranteed the job or the bet. You have to put in work. You have to earn your stripes. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Laurent could speak to this too, but I really would like to see a much more inclusive apprenticeship type program. You know, I know in the UK in culinary, because my son went through it, in culinary apprenticeships. You know, so basically, you know, the government, just like like they're at school, the government will pay the wages, the apprenticeship wages for someone to go into a restaurant, for example, and become an apprentice. But the restaurant then actually commits to this structured apprenticeship program. So they're not simply using somebody as, as slave labor. There are apprenticeship programs for a whole range of vocations, but I know personally about the culinary side of it. You know, for a small restaurant that has just a few employees, they can't afford to take on and pay a student, even $6 an hour to just be a student. But if the government is effectively funding that almost as a form of apprenticeship scholarship, then the student can actually learn on the job. And I mean, I know we have the hospitality school and things like that. And I mean, we need to look at how we integrate that within industry. But I really do believe that apprenticeships play an important role going forward, and it's something that we have to expand. We need to look at not only in the restaurant business, but actually in water sports and things like that too. We had a training program just before COVID that we had launched 2 months before, where we were training newbies, literally people who had just never been in a water sports industry before, training them all the way up to captaincy in an 18-month program. And we had 2 Caymanians in that program. They had literally joined us about 6 weeks before, and then COVID hit. Now, coming out of this, there's no way that we can afford to reinstate that program. But if government says, okay, you know what, we're going to give you 1 Caymanian, we're going to pay their apprenticeship wages, you do the training, you provide us with a structured program that you can evaluate them, you can grade them, and they come out with a captaincy certificate or whatever afterwards, then I'd be more than happy to take them on. So I think this is where we really got to get around the table and roll up our sleeves and look at how we do this. There's no one element to this problem or issue, and there's no one solution. We got to make sure we have attracted immense talent from around the world to come into our restaurant industry. Now what we got to do is we got to put the mechanisms and the programs in place to make sure that talent is then used to train and motivate Caymanians. That's what we have to do, right? So rather than relying year after year after year on that talent, finding new talent from overseas, how do we grow our own homegrown talent? And that's what we need to look at. And I really do believe, Sandra, that it is more important for us to convince Caymanians, young Caymanians, or, I mean, young or coming from other industries, I think it is important for us to convince them that the tourism and hospitality, the service sector is important, because that's the sector that visitors come to our island and they interact with our people. To some degree, you don't have to be, if you're a Caymanian and you're working in a back office at a bank, it almost doesn't matter in terms of our, what we offer as a tourism product, right? But if you're a front desk person, if you're a concierge, if you're a deckhand, if you're a food and beverage server, having Caymanians in these roles is part of Caymanianizing the visitor experience. And I think that's important. However, considering the pandemic that we have been through and are still going through, it's going to be challenging, I believe, to convince maybe young school leavers to go into tourism, because it's like, whoa, tourism, has been dead for 15 months, right? So it is going to take us time. It's not like flicking a switch and boom, everybody's going to want to get back into tourism. I bet there are a lot of people that are glad that they were working for government when the pandemic hit, because government was about the only organization on the island that said, we're not going to cut salaries, we're not going to cut jobs, right? So you understand.
They gave themselves a pay raise.
Yeah. I mean, that's like a little bit like blows your mind, right? But what I'm saying is that it's not easy to attract the people in the industry in the first place for the reasons that we talked about. But then the challenge then of training and retaining them, it is a challenge, but it's an important challenge. It is important for our tourism product to have Caymanians being the face and in the front line of our visitor experience. That is of national importance. Otherwise, we become just like any other destination, South Beach. In other words, it doesn't matter where you are, because all the other Caribbean countries you go to, whether it's Jamaica, St. Lucia, Barbados, whatever, you have locals from those countries that are in the front line of tourism. Cayman is probably maybe the only place in the world that, that we don't have, an abundance of locals in the front line. And we need to try to do that. Otherwise, our tourism product will just become like this generic, I don't know, faceless, just cultureless type thing that is just, bland, basically. We've got to get Caymanians in the front line. And I'll tell you, just one last point before I give the mic over to somebody else. We, as a nation and as a people, we have to value our Caymanianness. In other words, let's not drop the Caymanian accent just because you work in a hotel, right? We need to recognize that our accent, even our words, I mean, what's the last time you heard the word erectly, right? We have words in our dialect and our language that we don't use, and we certainly don't use it in front of non-Caymanians and certainly not visitors, right? But when we encounter our visitors and we tell them about growing up in Cayman and we tell them about words and things like that, that enriches their experience. Absolutely. So we need to start out by recognizing that the things that make us Caymanian are worthwhile. They are of value. And we must stop suppressing that and putting that down. We must make that something of value, so that the hotels and the large organizations say, I'm looking for a Caymanian because I want, when that telephone is answered at our reception desk, it's a Caymanian accent that is answering, right? But we have to insist on that value, and we ourselves have to value it. Speak in your Caymanian accent. Speak in your dialect, use your words, because it enriches the visitor experience. We must not allow other people from other parts of the world to come here and tell us that we have to be different. No, this is our country. This is our home. Our forefathers, it was what makes them Caymanian that attracted people here in the first place, right? It is not about the beaches. It's not about the coral. It's not about the clear blue waters. People come here, and they will continue to come here because of us Caymanians. And we must wake up every day valuing that, because if we don't value it, I can guarantee you nobody else is going to value it.
Right. Thank you, Troy. So on that note, folks, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely wonderful program. Over 235 comments so far. I'm sorry that I couldn't read them all. I did try to share them all on screen. There were some really great ones. People, Holly saying big up to Luigi, Troy, and Laurent and Eden. It's not an easy time right now in tourism, but you all are still staying strong and going above and beyond to give back to the industry and proudly representing Cayman. Hashtag Cayman proud. I love that. Mona says, great program this morning. Judy says, it's not as simple as taking all the unemployed people and giving them tourism jobs. Not everyone will fit into service environment. Even in the midst of the pandemic, Caymanian applicants to service jobs are low. It's not because of laziness, but if someone isn't driven to do the job, then they're probably not cut out for it. You can take a lot of money in service. You can make a lot of money, in service if you're good at it. But being good takes time and a lot of hard work. Natasha enjoying the conversation as well today. Carson says, talk like it, bro. Talk like Caymanian Bobo. Liliana says, I love everything that I heard on the program today. Louisa is in agreement with Troy's comments. Jonathan says, y'all think it's bad now. Wait till some of these new permit holders get their status. What a hot mess. Errol Sims says that he's watching an awesome show. So we need to continue this conversation, Troy. This is a beginning as we try to get ever closer to reopening. Someone sent a message on WhatsApp saying that the bank, plus the bank issues, the other girl said it best, there's so much to do before one can be convinced to go into tourism. The Minister of Finance, the Ministry of Tourism, and the banks clearly need to have a conversation. I strongly believe mentoring inner schools and taking away that taboo of working in the industry, we could get more Caymanians involved. We have a lot of work to do, says someone, and I think that is a God's honest truth. We do have a lot of work to do, and the conversation has begun. So let us not, just have this conversation one on, one off. This has been an ongoing conversation. I saw that Mr. Johan Moxham and Mr. Alwick were contributing some comment to that as well. Alwick, I think you're going to be on tomorrow or Friday. We need to just confirm. Shirley says, one sad reality in the tourism industry is that many Caymanians who make $6 or $7 per hour think that this is all they're worth. And so they only give that $6 or $7 of themselves instead of looking at the bigger picture of good tips, promotions, other opportunities, because they've been recognized as more than a $6 worker. Now, this is a very interesting way of putting it. I know firsthand in the tour business, many sell themselves short and will do a tour such as a drive around for 3 hours at 15 people for $5 each when they could afford and then unfortunately that comment got cut off. So we can't see the rest of it. Green Clean Cayman says the banks do not respect 100% Caymanian-owned businesses. Many people don't ever, because it may not be big and flashy. Everyone has to start somewhere. Only 60-40 businesses can really survive. Then they push the Caymanian face to fool people. The struggle is real. So very, very interesting. Damien makes the point that certain nationalities are able to get loans without a problem. We see it all the time. They're here for 3 months and they can secure and purchase a home for $500,000. Yet Caymanians have been here a lifetime and they're struggling. So I think there's a number of things, folks, that really need to be addressed. Holly, thanks for pointing out that Laurent won the Rising Star of the Year award at the Stingray Tourism Award ceremony. So we wish him the best of luck, and we look forward to him continuing to do great things. Troy, I appreciate your willingness to always come on the program and have tough discussions. Choose. Thank you so much, my dear.
You're very welcome. I look forward to being on again and continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. All right. And Denward, last word, says extremely crucial dialogue took place here today. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Denward.
Thank you, Miss Darlene. Some comments there about permits and so on. We will continue to have this conversation, folks. I appreciate you all tuning into the program this morning. Your interest has demonstrated that this is something that this is only the beginning of our dialogue. We need to find solutions. There have been a couple things that have been thrown into the pot today that make good logical sense. I think we're a little bit behind in the training initiatives. We need to get those done. I understand that government budgets are tight, but I also understand that the government in the middle of the pandemic before they prorogued and shut down, the LA, they gave themselves a 3-month severance package so that even people who decided to not run for a re-election got 3 months of free salary on the back of the people. So you do the math on that, folks. If you were minister making, say, 13 grand per month times 3, that is a whopping almost $40,000 that could have gone to assist Caymanians training, upskilling themselves, and getting ready for when the borders reopen. And multiply that, that's just per one MP, multiply that by the number of MPs that didn't run in the last election or that were not reelected. I'm just saying. Plus the pay increases. We got to do better. We have to demand better from our people. We have to expect better even from our elected officials, and that they will put the necessary initiatives in place that will encourage the civil servants to do certain things. And, we've had almost 18 months of sitting back, not training our people. It's not too late, but now you're kind of rushing it a little bit to say, oh, let's get everybody trained in the next 3 or 4 months and rush them through a program. It takes time to learn how to deliver excellent customer service. Listen, folks, there are people such as myself who's provided training for government. I used to do it through what was, it's now DC Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS, but it was Children Service or something else at the time. And they were working, with people who were unemployed and putting them through a program. And I provided the customer service training for that program at no cost. Just covered my materials because I would print books and whatever, but I did not charge for my time. And I think we all have to be willing to give back to our communities in different ways. I have a certain expertise. I can help other Caymanians. What's wrong with doing that? But government has to lead the initiative. I have in the past led initiatives with computer training courses, which we have conducted at the public library because nobody else is doing it. I was like, how people come. Now, some of y'all didn't show up, but the vast majority of people showed up. And I ensured, make sure you're feeding people because, people want a little patty or something while they're here. And there are people who up to this day will walk up to me, Miss Sandy, I remember when you did customer service training with me. I still have my certificate. And that has stuck with them. And there are things that they would have learned through those various training initiatives that they can now take into the workforce. So the bottom line is we're in this boat together. And if the boat is going to sink, I hope you all understand that we will all sink in it together, right? And so I want to remind everyone of the importance of that, being supportive. Here is, I don't know how true this is, but nonetheless, it is a very good quote. It said, the founder of Dubai, Sheikh Rashid, was asked about the future of his country, and he replied, my grandfather rode a camel. My father rode a camel. I ride a Mercedes. My son rides a Land Rover, and my grandson is going to ride a Land Rover. But my great-grandson is going to have to ride a camel again. Why is that, he was asked, and his reply was this. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create difficult times. Many will not understand it, but you have to raise warriors, not parasites. My fellow Caymanians, I appreciate the young lady who sent this to me this morning because this is so incredibly appropriate to our message as we move forward into getting closer to reopening our borders. You cannot be a parasite in this community. You cannot be a parasite on the government of the Cayman Islands. We all have to do our part. And we all have to work for the individual successes that we're seeking, as well as the collective successes as a community that we wish to attain. So please join me. Hand in hand, we can do this together. I believe it. I believe that Caymanians are not lazy by and large. I believe that we have a lot of hardworking people who've made tremendous sacrifices throughout their entire lives. And there's so much that can be done. There's more that can be done. And there's so much that has been done. And as Caymanians, we have to be prepared to be part of the solution, not the problem. Folks, I appreciate you guys tuning into the program. You have made this, believe it or not, coming up next week. A week from yesterday will be our 4-year anniversary. And in 4 years, CMR has made some amazing strides. I mean, we've done it. Despite all the naysayers and everything else that people said, we are on the tongues of everyone in this community. And it took hard work, just like everything else in life. Our success story didn't come easy. Came with some bumps in the road. We made our fair share of mistakes, but baby, look at us now. We're going, and we will continue to go as high as possible in this journey, and we will always do our best to deliver people the topics on this show that are relevant, that are interesting. I see Luigi has jumped back on. Luigi, we're actually about to wrap up the program here, but not to worry. I know you've got lots to say, and we will continue. I was just saying that we will continue this conversation. But next week, folks, as we move into celebrating our anniversary, I want to encourage anyone who wants to celebrate with us, because we are actually going to be giving away prizes. I'm putting together my whole list of goodies. So you do not want to miss the anniversary show on the 29th. You can join in. You can certainly wish us congratulatory messages. Some companies are going to be providing gift certificates to the program as well. So we're super excited about that. There'll be lots of opportunities to win. We're going to make you earn your prizes a little bit, but trust me, we've got some fantastic stuff that we're hoping to be able to give away. So tune in along with some other corporate sponsors for the day's celebration on June the 29th, as that is now our 4-year anniversary. We're still babies. We're coming out of the toddler stage, but we're certainly getting there. Thank you so much, Mr. Tommy, joining us from the Bahamas. Darlene, thank you so much. We're going to continue to address these issues that matter most to the people of the Cayman Islands. CMR is about the people's voice, representing everybody, really. But Caymanians first has always been the message. So thank you guys so much. Again, have a beautiful day. Please be safe. And God's willing, I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.